Oh, hello there, and welcome back to the Agostinho Zinga show with me, your host, Agostinho Zinga, and this is episode number 382. That's 382. 382. ¿Cómo estás, mi amigos? Bien. How am me? How am I? How am I? How am I? I've lost a word. I lost a bit to speak the English language because I'm learning so many languages at the same time. But how am I? I'm feeling very good. I'm feeling very well. Hope you are well wherever you are. If it's your first time tuning into the show via YouTube, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and even comment down below. If you're listening to this podcast via any podcasting apps such as Overcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever else that you listen to or you get your podcast from, make sure you download the show, leave me a 5-star review, and let me know if you have any thoughts. And of course, if you want to support the show via Patreon, you're more than welcome to. A link via Patreon can be found in the description wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. The Patreon link is Agostinho. Right, no, patreon.com/Agostinho. That's patreon.com/AGOSTINHO for as little as $1 per month or equivalent, or whatever currency, wherever you are in the country, or wherever you are in the world, actually. You can get access to my entire audio library as well as this podcast in full audio HD format before anybody else. Before your mom, before your dad, before your brother, before your cat, before your dog. You can get access to it directly via Patreon. Patreon.com/Agostinho. Patreon.com/AGOSTINHO for access to my entire library as well as this show in full HD mode. Make sure you subscribe on there for as little as $1. Support the cause, support my alcoholic consumption. Let me be the man that I need to be right there down below on Patreon. Anyway, we're back in the zone, back in the space. Hope you guys are feeling good. Hope you guys are feeling well. I'm okay here. I'm right at the start of Sober October, drinking my water. So wherever you're listening to us now, hope you're on a good little vein. Hope you have decided what you want to do for this October. We're heading into the we're heading into the month just before Christmas, just before the New Year. This year will be over in like a couple of months. Done, finito. And again, not to be that guy I said I told you so, but I did tell you so at the beginning of this pandemic. I said this thing is gonna last a year. I knew it because if ever I know something, if ever there's one thing that I do know about, is the slowness at which organizations and institutions and they're just the slowness in terms of bureaucracy as well. And I guess mostly that has to come from my experience of organizing parties, going to illegal parties, and just generally being a bit of a nightlife freak. I know what one little law, one little rule can do to decimate an entire scene, and I know how slow it is to kind of get it back to where it once was. For instance, Dawson, a good example in East London, right? Once they introduced one rule that took away the ability for certain restaurants to have like a late license in order to kind of stay open and past their kind of registered closing time, it decimated that street. From the time you had to apply for the late license to have an extension for a public holiday or a Halloween or a New Year, it kind of killed that street completely. And ever since then, they've tried to kind of recreate the magic. They've tried to restart the engine, but it just hasn't restarted in the same sort of way. And I use this analogy all the time, but it's similar to when you go to a really banging house party and the police are called, right? As soon as the police are called to a really banging house party, no matter if you restart it again, it's never the same vibe as it was prior to the police coming. It's just something about that interruption, something about that confusion that essentially weeds out certain people who never tend to come back, and that vibe, that magic that was there prior to the police coming can never be recreated. And that's exactly what happened with COVID. As soon as COVID hit and no one really knew how to deal with it, because again, I think we were so unlucky because I guess it hit probably one of the worst prepared countries, or it hit one of the best breeding grounds for COVID to hit in terms of Italy, right? Once it left kind of China or it left the Southeast Asia, once it hit kind of mainland Italy or mainland Europe, and it came straight to Italy with a lot of people who live in the same house, in the same family, a lot of older folk, it completely decimated that country, right? And I think once we saw that as a nation, once we saw that as a global community, or whatever that term is, right, we all got really scared. And we're like, oh my god, we don't want that to happen to us, and we all panicked and locked everything down and all these really draconian measures that weren't maybe done with the most soundest of mind. They were done in a state of panic, which I can understand, right? No one wants to be in charge when half your population dies to this invisible virus. I get it. You want to protect your back, and that's another thing as well to learn. You have to learn too that COVID, these sort of things that have been put in place restrictions in movement and all this malarkey, they aren't done to help us out or to make sure grandma lives another year. They're done so that the person in charge doesn't get the blame. No one wants to be blamed or be responsible for, X amount of people passing under their watch. So they're going to do everything that they can to be blameless. That's it. It's just a blame game. It essentially is a blame game. Like, who can be blameless and who can escape, the human rights court. Would you say the human rights court after this thing's over? Will people do that? I guess they will, right? Some people are going to want people to be held accountable for the loss of life, I'm sure. So, and also there's what's that phrase about, no one wants to be on the wrong side of history, right? So I'm assuming that kind of plays into their mind too. But again, it's less about preserving life, and it's more so about preserving that person's life who's in charge. So I knew as soon as this pandemic hit and things were closing down, it was literally impossible for things to get restarted back up again at a flick of a switch. The only place where it sort of happened has been in America. They kind of, moved to the beat of their own drum. I think as a global community, we've kind of seen that. We've seen that even in recent days with what's happening in Florida, where DeSantis has decided to write, was it a executive order to open up all businesses, open up all bars and restaurants and get the economy back up and running. He basically has said, look, enough of the lockdowns. We're not doing them anymore. If you're ill or you're at risk, stay at home. If you're worried about going outside, wear a mask, but we're going to keep the stores open, which is, an admirable way to go about things. I think it's just following what they've done in Scandinavia, which has worked to varying levels of success. But that's why you would like to have seen that earlier, innit, right? I mentioned it previously. It would have been great if America decided, especially with the individual states, they could have been really innovative and creative with how they approach COVID and decided, hey, we're this state, right? And we have people who have this kind of temperament. Maybe we can use this kind of restriction or these kind of laws in order to kind of keep this virus down. Or we live in this sort of place and, the sun's out, we're next to the beach. Maybe we can kind of be a little bit more flexible with how we do our stuff. They could be really interested. It would have been a really great case study to take all these learnings, and imagine how thankful the scientists would have been to have all these amazing data points, right, from all these different places about how they dealt with COVID. And then you could maybe have a better idea of how to go forward with it, right? But now at the moment, because everybody in that country, everybody across America has essentially been on the fence about it, hasn't necessarily been sold, right? Doesn't necessarily agree with the lockdown, thinks it's a hoax, 5G towers, all this nonsense. It's led to this point where the only place where they've kind of done it well has been in places where the governors have essentially enforced it by force, right? They've not given anyone any option. They've kind of penalized people. They've arrested people for opening up their bar, arrested people. Remember earlier on, they were arresting mums for taking their kids to the park, like some madness things, right? That's the only places where they've kind of been able to do it the quote unquote right way. But everywhere else has just been a bit of a shit show. And, it's not only in America, in Europe too, especially here in the UK, we've done that as well. But again, it's been really interesting to see it from the outside in, just from a non-political person, somebody that doesn't necessarily get politics, to see what's going on and how people are dealing with it has been very, very interesting. Anyway, before we get on with that, let's get straight into it, to the show. Jam-packed show for you today, but I want to start off with the most important thing today, and that is Man United won against Brighton away from home 3-0 in the EFL Cup, right? League Cup has really... the League Cup has really sort of changed in its sort of importance, I think, now, especially in the Premier League, especially with Premier League teams. It also, it obviously has to do with money. I think because of the prevalence in money in the league, or prior to pandemic especially, and the fact that a lot of the teams in the top 10 are spending, 20 million, 30 million plus on players. They have aspirations of playing in Europe, whether it's a Europa League or the Champions League. They're not really fussed, and they generally want to create a better product that they can essentially sell to bigger brands and all that malarkey, right? So the Premier League is big business, and they've now realized that it's not just enough to be in competitions. You need to actually win trophies in order to kind of boost your profile, and of course, allow you the opportunity to gain new brand sponsorships. And I think, of course, if you spend a lot of money too, you have to kind of justify the money spent in some sort of tangible way by winning silverware. It just is what it is, and sports is kind of cutthroat and black and white that way, right? You can say you're the best team, you can say you have the best players, but really the record books are only going to remember the trophies. Of course, the fans will remember the moments, the memories of some of your cult heroes, but at the end of the day, if you want to really create history and really rewrite the history of your club, you really need to have some trophies in a trophy cabinet. So the EFL Cup has kind of regained an importance that you never really saw in prior years. I think most teams sort of treated it as a need, as a kind of needs must. I do remember back in the day, Portsmouth kind of fielding a completely different starting 11. They would have fielded in Champions League, quote unquote, disrespecting the EFL Cup in that respect. But if you're Harry Redknapp and you're managing Portsmouth, right, the most money you're ever going to get is facing Man United at home, right, at your stadium during the FA Cup or something on those lines, or having a run at maybe qualifying for the Europa League. You don't really want to bother yourself with trying to win the EFL. But now it's sort of changed. Obviously, all the teams are spending money. So with the teams in the upper end of the table, such as the top 4 teams, it's gaining even more important significance because there's only so many trophies you can win in the league, right? Or in one season. You can win the Premier League, you can win the Champions League, the FA Cup, and the League Cup. There's only 4 positions, and there's 4 very strong clubs, plus the ones outside of the top 4 who can take points, who can make you lose, who can knock you out in cup competitions. So it's very difficult to win these League Cups, especially towards the latter stages when teams start fielding a lot more, when the better teams start fielding a lot more stronger teams in order to make sure that they win the trophies. And of course, with this match in particular, Man United already kind of squeakily won against Brighton, right, 3-2, which we actually didn't deserve to win at all. It was kind of a lackluster performance. So we were a bit, I'll say for myself as a Man United fan, I was a little bit anxious about the game. I didn't necessarily think we would be able to put Brighton away. I just thought, I assumed it would probably go to penalties and we'd maybe lose. But of course, the game didn't pan out that way, and to my surprise and to everybody else's surprise, Man United ended up winning 3-0. Now, I think some people might have had us down for winning. I don't think we had us down for keeping a clean sheet, to be honest, especially considering how poorly we played in the other match and considering how often Brighton hit the world work in the other game as well. But the changes made to the side that faced Brighton were pretty decent. I don't think anyone really complained about the overall lineup. In goal, you had Dean Henderson, who obviously needed the opportunity to play, and somebody that's obviously vying and pushing David De Gea for #1 spot. Brandon Williams, who I'm still not sold on as being a fullback, let alone the left back, played at left back. Lindelof, who a lot of people don't really rate, myself included, played alongside Eric Bailly, which is an interesting partnership because I've always maintained that Eric Bailly is the best defender at Man United. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care about the price tags. I don't care who plays for England. If he's fit, if he's healthy, Eric Bailly is the best centre back we have. Now, does that say more about our centre backs and does about Eric Bailly? Probably, but in terms of the ability to command the back line, the ability to be aggressive, the ability to win balls in the air, win balls on a one-on-one duel, play the ball out of the back, he's the best. He's the most well-rounded defender we have, bar none. And he really kind of makes you question why we even decided to sign Victor Lindelof. I know why we did, because I'm sure at that time we signed Victor Lindelof, Eric Bailly was coming off a spat of injuries. We didn't have Harry Maguire at that time. We were still playing Phil Jones and Chris Smalling. I get we needed the bodies, but in terms of the 2 defenders, the most important one is Eric Bailly, and whoever you sit alongside him, it doesn't really matter. But I think if you have Eric Bailly in your back 4, you are probably all the way there. Then Diego Dallo had a rare start, his first start I think since June, a player that I think has been greatly disrespected by our club in terms of, he's not great, don't get me wrong. But if you're going to play Timothy Fosu-Mensah and not have Diego Dallo, like, I think that I would take that as a personal insult. There's no way you can play Timothy Fosu-Mensah in front of me when you got Diego Dallo in your squad. It just doesn't make any sense because Timothy Fosu-Mensah isn't good. He's not Man United standard. I'd even go as far as saying he's not Premier League standard. He is trash, like horrendous, right? He's had so many chances to prove his worth. Whenever he has played, he's looked terrible. I'm not sure it's because he's not a right back and should be a midfielder, but regardless of that, he's not a good player. He's not. I'd imagine part of the reason why I have him in the squad is because he seems like a bit of a fun personality. He seems to have a lot of friends in football. Like everybody in football, far and wide, seems to know who Timothy Fosu-Mensah is. I'm not too sure why that is. Maybe because of his background coming up in Ajax. I don't know. But regardless, he's not a great player. So Diego Dallo getting a rare start was great to see. And then you had McTominay and Fred playing in a double pivot. In front of them, we had Daniel James and Donny van der Beek and Juan Mata. Happy for Donny van der Beek to play. Donny van der Beek, sorry. Long time coming. I think it's only 3 games in, but it's been concerning that Solskjaer has used him so rarely, especially considering how quickly some of our starting lineup, especially Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba guys, got run into the wall. It would have been nice to see him get rotated more often, but again, it is what it is. Daniel James obviously has had a bit of a up and down United career. He's a player who I still maintain has a use for the team. I just think that, unfortunately, playing underneath Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a manager who isn't necessarily going to improve you as a coach, He's not the most tactically versatile manager in the world. He's not really going to bring out the best in Daniel James because he's a bit one-dimensional. When you have one-dimensional players, they need to be able to do exactly what they are good at doing and nothing else. Whether that's him running behind the back line, whether that's him sprinting up and down the bar line, whatever it is, he needs to have a rigid system that he can exactly fit into. If not, he's no use, which is why you see him being linked to places like Leeds with obviously the Leeds manager under Bielsa. You can definitely see him fit in there really well, right? He's small, he's mobile, he presses really well. You can see that working. And of course, Igalo playing in front again, who I again think has been disrespected because whenever he does play, he always has to play with the worst players. He doesn't get to play with the best player, which again isn't necessarily the fault of the manager. You have to just perform when you have to perform, but hey, here's what it is. Game was a bit shit. First half, I'd say that, apart from the goal, of course, from Scott McTominay, great free kick in the box. Was that free kick or corner? I don't remember quickly. Was it corner, free kick? I think it might have been a corner. I forgot. He heads it in, which he probably should score a lot more headers looking at his frame and how big he is. Second half started off much the same, a little bit slow, but then we ended up scoring a pretty decent goal with Juan Mata, who was probably the man of the match. And then, of course, towards the end, Paul Pogba, Marcus Rashford came on, up the levels in quality, and Paul Pogba sealed the victory with a free kick in top corner, which came off a deflection. And the Paul Pogba conversation is an interesting one because he got played a bit more further up the pitch, right? And that's kind of a criticism a lot of people have had about Solskjaer and his love for Bruno. I think as great as Bruno Fernandes is, there's no denying, in my opinion, again, that I would say the better number 8, quote, conventional number 8 or conventional number 10 out of the two is definitely Paul Pogba. The better kind of all-around dynamic, sort of like box-to-boxy kind of midfielder would probably be Bruno Fernandes, but still, I'll say Bruno Fernandes still takes too many risks for how deep he plays sometimes. I think you can take those risks and play those kind of high percentage balls further up the pitch like a Kevin De Bruyne, right? Balls over the top, balls from a weird angle, trying to force it through the lines, right? Because if you lose possession, way up, in the opposition half, it's very unlikely they're going to spring attack and punish you every time. But if you keep losing the ball in your own half or next to the halfway line, you give the opposition more opportunity to score. But I would still say in a competent team with a manager that actually has a system where they can rotate players, it would be great to see a team that included Paul Pogba, Donny van der Beek, Bruno Fernandes, and Fred, all like a defensive midfielder, all in 4. It could possibly work, but you would need a manager that's able to kind of utilize maybe the fullbacks for the width, because you don't necessarily have Luke Shaw and Wan Rakasaka aren't going to be the best people going forward and attacking, or you're going to need a manager that's able to kind of have the players interchanging in the front in some way. But there's a way to kind of get around it, but you need somebody with a bit more tactical nous, and that's not the case that we have now, unfortunately, with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Again, positives of that. Igalo still looked a bit off it, which I don't really blame him for. I think he's been out too long. Dalot had some really good moments too. He definitely showed the importance that we need to have actual wing backs that can attack, because we don't have any natural width on the wings anymore, or as we did in the past. I think or if you're playing a more inverted system, you need to have your fullbacks pushing up. And if we don't have those fullbacks pushing up and delivering assists or contributing into attacks, it's basically pointless having them on the field, really. But yeah, decent match overall, decent performance from the players, the best that we can do for this moment. But again, we still need players. We still need probably a defensive midfielder. We probably still need another centre back, especially if one of Maguire or Lindelof or Bailly, most importantly, gets injured. He's definitely our best centre back, hands down. We need those players to come in during the window sometime soon. We've only got a couple of days left, really. So, not really holding out any hope on that one. But again, decent performance from us, all things considered. And hopefully we push on and win ourselves a trophy, because I still think if Solskjaer is unable to get us top 4, but wins a trophy, he unfortunately will still end up losing his job. So I don't think he's going to put too much emphasis on the cups. I think he's still going to try and ensure that we finish as high up as we can in the league, which is no guarantee considering how well other teams have started. But hey, you can only hope. You can only hope. Anyway, let's move on to other stuff, because I don't want to waste too much of your time with that. So as you can see here on the screen, Tory Lanez has put out a new record, right? A new video for his song called Most High, on his project called Daystar, which is essentially an opportunity for him to air out his grievances regarding the problems or the alleged incident that he had with Megan Thee Stallion, which has been an interesting thing to kind of observe from the outside in, right? Because he obviously he he obviously strongly feels like he didn't do nothing wrong, and the people that do feel like he did something wrong feel like he shouldn't be talking. But then if you didn't do anything wrong, you should have a right to defend yourself, and you should be innocent until proven guilty. But in the best way possible, if you want to answer some of the critics, best way to do it is maybe to just put out a song on YouTube. So it's to put out an album, right? Just kind of put it on wax. You get the ability to be a little bit artistically creative, artistically free. You get the ability to kind of slip in some home truths and kind of have it be, music style, as they might have said in the Joe Budden podcast. But I thought it was a very clever way of doing stuff. And again, just from the purely musical standpoint, it's easily one of his best projects, if not the best project that he's put out in a long, long time. Especially when you consider the kind of rigid format of like a Chicks tape, right? Which is essentially taking old school, classic R&B hip hop records, flipping them in a contemporary way. But in terms of showing a range of sounds, a range of sound textures, a range of tonality, a range of melodies, Daystar, top. So we're gonna watch Tory Lanez Most High official music video, and I'll give you my reaction as we go along.
Stepped out of bail, I did a diddy bop. I had to tilt my
head. Got the OJ Glove at start. That's funny.
Walk away free cause I'm innocent. And when I walk the whole world, oh a nigga wild. We've been at the gas station
all night.
We've been at the gas station
all night.
They done had the bag waiting all night.
Oh, this looks fun, isn't it?
Tell them that it's lit, bitch, we on fire. Hey, praise to the
Most High. Hey.
Praise to the Most High.
LOL, the white girl at the back, right, doing the epic white girl dance. When it just gets so crunk. I love white girls when they get dancey, innit? It just gets so crunk. They don't want to do with their body. Just jumping, doing nonsense. Look at the back. Look.
Praise to the Most High. Praise to the Most High. Praise to the Most High.
Ah, you see her? Look at her moving her arms. So cringe. Look at her. You go, girl.
Devil want a nigga show.
Okay.
I beat that nigga 1,000 times in a row.
Yeah, here we go.
A couple weeks ago, he thought he threw his best shot.
Yep.
All I'm looking at is Twitter playing friend or foe.
I wonder if that is a thing, isn't it? Like, because obviously he's deeply religious. If you've seen the interview that his father did, Tory Lanez's father did with Milagro Grams, again, Mob Radio, check her out. She's been at the forefront of reporting this whole incident between Megan Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez. And she's basically been on point since the beginning. She always kind of was a little bit skeptical about the story that Megan put out there. And she's basically been proven correct if we believe what we believe. We believe in what we kind of know from now. But I wonder, like, because he's a deeply religious guy, I wonder if there is some kind of validity to the idea that this is definitely an attack from the devil, an attack from an evil entity, because there has to be something there. There has to be more than because it's like conspiracy. Conspiracy theories are still similar, right? Because there has to be an acknowledgement that sometimes if there are too many coincidences, that it's not a coincidence. There has to be something more malicious, something more premeditated, involving whatever you're talking about, right? Not everything can just be chalked up to a coincidence. It's just there's too many. Sometimes if things are too coincidental, they've obviously been planned out in some regard. So if you're Tory Lanez and you finally get your masters back, which is really rare, right? Especially considering how young he is in the industry, especially considering how green he is too, for him to be so aware of his contracts, to be aware that he's in a bad deal. Because you remember, he went through that bad spat. He was about to expose his label, but then he didn't. He gets out of his deal. He's one of the rare ones. He gets out of his deal, but he's also kind of French. Prior to the Megan Thee Stallion thing, he's French Montana popular, which means like he knows everybody, right? He's friends with. That's why I think in the album he has such a personal. He seems so personally offended that Kehlani and JoJo sort of threw him under the bus because he actually knows them as friends or as kind of musical peers. So he's one of the rare artists who's at that age. He's very friendly with everybody, right? They respect, not friendly like Rich the Kid friendly, but like they respect him musically, right? They're like, okay, cool, you're one of our peers, we rate you, right? So he's in that vein. He finally gets his master back, so he's got that weird thing where like, even though he doesn't have the backing of a major label, he still has these personal connections that he can call upon. So it's a very rare situation. And then suddenly, out of all that, you end up hooking up with one of the, the quote unquote baddest women within the industry in Megan Thee Stallion, someone that guys are lusting after all over the place. You kind of build this really deep connection, if you believe what he says on the album. And then suddenly, off the back of a really unfortunate incident, the entire industry is trying to cancel you. And it must feel like, okay, this is definitely a sort of a punishment for me deciding to walk away from a label, because there is this, you have to kind of feel to yourself like there's no way Tory Lanez would have been punished or would have been dealt with this way if he was signed to like a big label. If he was on Atlantic, this wouldn't have happened in this fashion. Like they would have protected their investment, right? Because of course, because especially if he would have signed a new deal before he blew up with the whole quarantine radio thing, he would have, this label would have bended over backwards to make sure he's protected, because there's so much money invested and tied up in him as a brand or as an entity. They can't allow it to go to waste. So I definitely think there is some credence to this idea. Again, it can be a little bit woo-woo-ish. It can be a little bit conspiratorial. It can be a little bit unnecessarily spiritual, but there must be an element to me that thinks, you know what, there is something otherworldly about these attacks that just come out of the blue. And the fact that no one's willing as well, you know, the other thing, no one's willing to kind of revise their position. No one's willing to say, okay, maybe we got it wrong. No one's willing to. Everyone's just saying, no, it's involving a woman, a girl that we love, so we're going to throw him under the bus. It's so bizarre.
Chasers need the relevancy. Hard talk come from me, relevant MCs. None of those guys are relevant as me. That's what that means. I'm on a whole nother league. Wait, don't stop. Let's tell another story. What the fuck happened to rap? This isn't for me. Never did I ever think I would see the day. Rap niggas telling the cops to come for me. They try to turn me to a cold felon. All they help me do is get some more millions. All I see is free toy, free toy. Homie, I was in Miami on the shore chillin'. I got a whole new chick. Mean. We on the island and she fucked me like she off a bean.
What's his face breaks up with somebody, right? Every time what's his name, Future hooks up with another video vixen and ends up having to break up with them. That's why fans are so excited, because you're like, you know what, we're gonna get the best music ever, because naturally that doesn't naturally happen. So it's no coincidence that Tory Lanez went through one of his most difficult periods as an artist, especially an independent artist, and now he's putting together a best body of work and a really good music video.
I'm out in Jersey and I'm balling like I'm off the team.
Woo!
I bought it for it's a Birkin or it's all
Woo!
Stepped out of bail, I did a diddy bop.
Oh yeah.
I had to tilt my hat at the city cop.
Oh yeah.
I walk away free cause I'm
Innocent.
And when I walk the whole world, oh a nigga.
His hair still looks a bit funny though. That's the only thing. His hair looks a bit funny. It looks a bit sprayed on-ish. That's the one thing that's annoying too as men. When will they ever get to a point where it's at a good level, right? At the moment you're having to glue a toupee on your head or whatever it may be, but just having the ability, just fair enough. Fair enough, I can't grow like I can't go dreads, right, if I'm bored, but just allow me to have like a level 1, a level 2. Just let me have a level 2. I can just put on a couple 1-2 waves and keep it moving, right? Let me be able to do that. Why can't we do that? Tell us why, huh? Why? Come on, you scientists. Give us something. Throw us a bone. We don't want to be gluing toupees to our head.
I walk away free cause I'm innocent.
Yeah.
And when I walk the whole world, oh a nigga, why? We've been at the gas station all night.
This is good. This is fun, man.
We've been at the gas station all night. They done had the bag waiting all night. Tell them that it's lit, bitch.
You know what's funny? Who would be perfect on this? Meek Mill. But of course, you know, he's always getting criticized about being in women's business and being a little bit woman and having some sort of women tendencies and being catty and being shitty at social media. So this would have probably killed him, right? If he did this, right? People would have been so angry at him. He seems to be somebody a lot of people on social seem to hate. But Meek Mill would have ate this to pieces. He would have destroyed this.
Hey. Praise
To the Most High. Hey.
Praise to the Most High.
Hey.
Send it praise to the Most High.
Hey.
Praise
To the Most High.
Soon as I get my masters back, they want cheddar.
Ooh, look at Louis Vuitton and bagging, brother. That's amazing. I love it.
They niggas want fed it.
Yeah.
White labels trying to turn my black folk against me. Been selling weed, that nigga don't offend me.
Okay.
So trappers get blooming bags ready. We finna fill them bitches up with Mad Reggie. Take them to the block, sell them at exclusive price. And if they ask why it's trash, least the bag heavy. Devil never want a nigga so. I beat that nigga 1,000 times in a row. Balling on a demon like a pick and roll. She ugly, then I gotta hit her with the wall. Still up in this bitch going hard, nigga. Running through these bitches like a yard, nigga. I'm watching Complex for the talks, nigga. Cause it's an everyday struggle. Fuck more, nigga.
Fuck Mo! Oh, that's amazing. Fuck Mo, nigga. Mo for the Joe Budden podcast. That's amazing. You know, I love that beef, man, because if you listen to Joe Budden podcast, you know that Joe's always kind of Joe's always insinuating that Rory and Drake have some sort of static, and that Mo and Tory Lanez have some sort of issue. But you always get the feeling the Drake and Rory thing is a bit of like fun banter, of course, for the most part. I'm sure Drake has probably said something slick about Rory and vis-a-vis, but I'm sure that's just like a little banter thing. But you do get the feeling that Drake and the Mo and Tory thing would be legit. Just because of how Mo tries to go on, right? He tries to act a little bit too cool for school. You know, what's one of the things that he came out with the other day? Oh, he's never had a one-night stand, right? He's too cool to have a one-night stand, right? He's never not worn a rubber. Like, just those really things that's like, you know, okay, let's relax. Like, just let your guard down a little bit. Stop trying to be the cool guy in the room all the time. Do you know what I mean? We get it. You're from the streets, right? Packing up O's. We understand. But we got the feeling you definitely understand why there would be a bit of a tension between Tory and Mo, but considering how Tory goes on, you'd think, you know, it's the attitude and the bravado, the braggadocious attitude, but I can envision them having a lot more issues together. And when this issue first obviously came to light, Mo went hard in the paint at Tory. He said, "You a bitch, you this, you that, you can't touch women." And of course, it was way over the top. At the time, I was thinking, like, we don't even know the details of this case. It sounds really strange. It's one of the most bizarre stories of 2020, still the most bizarre one, especially when you consider the element of Kylie Jenner being involved, you know, Megan Thee Stallion's best friend being involved, like just mad LA nights, right? It's up there with that whole Jordan Woods, Tristan Thomas thing. But when he came out super hard, you also had the feeling like, is he doing this because he slightly wants to, you know, get with Megan himself? Like, this is one of those kind of overcompensating thing that some men do where they try to be a white knight for females in the hope that other females are going to be like, oh my God, look, he's back and supporting us. Or it could be just because, you know, Megan is signed to Rock Nation management, I'm guessing. Biggs, obviously, Miles Brothers involved in that. It's family ties. He just feels a kind of intrinsic need to always defend people on Rock Nation or not say anything too disparaging because, you know, it's family business, blah, blah, blah. But whatever the case, he tried to come out hard in the paint against Tory at the time when it was trendy to say that. Then when more details came out, he then decided to go back on the podcast and say, oh yeah, I was talking to my young boys. I was talking to my boys on the streets, the guys with their ears to the ground, and they told me, it's like, no, you didn't. You went on social media, you probably saw a video of Milagograms or Mob Radio or somebody of that ilk. Someone sent you a link or something, you read some information, you're like, ouch, maybe I went too hard at this guy. And then he tried to walk it back. But by that time, it was too late. I'm sure people in Tory's camp were like, nah, fuck this guy, innit? Because everybody else on the podcast, even maybe Parks, who's probably a little bit more social justice-y than Mo, he was even a little bit like, hey, if he did it, he's a bitch. But I'm gonna wait until more information comes out. But Mo's one that came out straight away and was like really hard in the paint at Tory. So it's funny that Tory kept the same energy. And again, it's interesting on the album that he, as much energy as much ammunition as he has towards Megan, you still feel like he has like a soft spot in his heart for her, and he hopes that they get back together. In so many songs, he's crying about, oh, let's get back once, hopefully we can be friends again. Of course, a much better voice, but you know, you can tell he has a lot of love for his woman. But everybody else gets dragged, like anyone that's just uttered his name gets flipping bullets to the head top. And I love it. It's so refreshing to see an artist just name names, right? Usually it's always this vague, indirect, double entendre bullshit. No, say their name. Say their name, brother, because you're saying it in private anyway. Why not just say it on record?
I got love for them till they count me out.
Yeah.
Niggas mad, I spun they bitches like a roundabout.
Which might be true. It might be true, right? The fact that it's a short Canadian guy, right, that decide that basically, you know, tore through the sugar wars of some of these most illustrious women in hip hop. Imagine that could be a thing, you know, and women surprise me. If you've ever watched clips of Love and Hip Hop, you know how deranged some of these guys get with women, right? Especially when you look at hip hop in general, they seem to pass around the same girls. So it wouldn't surprise me if some of the ill will towards Tory simply has to do with the fact that he's Canadian and he bags all these women, right? Because he sings and he dances and whatever it is, what else it may be, right? Just because he's just a cool guy. Because that's something that as well that does get overlooked, right? I would imagine, especially in the entertainment industry, I would imagine if you are a decent guy, right, just a human, forget what you look like. If you just treat people well, you could probably sweep up. You could probably be a sniper of all snipers when it comes to dealing with the vixens and the the vixens and the IG models of the world. You could probably clean up because they're having to deal with so many dickheads and douchebags that if you're just a little bit nice to them, it will really go a long way. So I can only imagine how, being Canadian, coming from the mud, quote unquote, as Tory Lanez has had, having a career where he's had, not the biggest cosigns in the industry, had to kind of make it on his own. He's probably a pretty level-headed dude, probably a good person to hang around with, probably has a good banter, blah, 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 blah. So it probably does come to him a lot more easier than some people. But again, I just don't think it's as hard as some of these guys make out. They probably go out their way to just be dickheads to people and then, are surprised when their favorite girl ends up hooking up with Tory. But hey, what do we know?
See niggas trying to kick me when I'm down and out. But I came in here with a purpose, I ain't round for clout. Illuminati trying to get me, nigga.
Oh.
They got a spear like a Britney, nigga. Through the hot and cold.
Oh, is that Britney? Oh, awesome. Awesome.
If I gotta die for that,
That's a funny scene. That's a funny scene.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I spent 4 seasons at the Four
No
Seasons.
seasons.
I might even flex just for no reason.
Uh-oh.
Got a penthouse in DR and PR. I call it PH balance and it's Puerto Rican. These niggas don't like me. I'm feeling Gucci.
He actually looks better too. Because I'm not really a fan of his style at all, zero prior to this, but he has actually been styled pretty well. Like, I like it when people I like it when people are styled in the way that they would actually dress day to day, right? That's probably the marker of a great stylist. Somebody is able to kind of tap into somebody's actual taste and kind of elevate it. He looks amazing here, man. Really good outfits, right? Got the blown jacket. I'm not sure what the hat is. Maybe it's D squared or something. Looks good with that hat. And then the other hat outfit with the short sleeve shirt. He's got that Ferrari that everyone seems to have in hip hop. What is it? The F44, whatever, F44 something. I don't know.
Man, and I'm so icy. Wear these niggas out like a white tee.
Yay.
My comeback rate super pricey. Stepped out of bail, I did a diddy bop.
That'd be funny as well, though, right? If he had a rate one moment, that's his dog, I'm assuming, right? Imagine he had a rate one moment prior to all this pandemic and the backlash, and then he decided to like, okay, look, I'll work with you, even if I know you disparaged me or kind of put mud on my name. But I'm gonna charge you 3 times what I would have charged prior. That would be jokes. That would be hilarious.
I did that. I had to tilt my hat at the city cop. I walk away free cause I'm innocent. And when I walk the whole world, oh a nigga wild. We've been at the gas station all night.
We've been at the gas station all night.
They done had the bag waiting all night. Tell them that it's lit, bitch, we on fire. Hey.
Praise to the Most High. Oh, that song's good.
Praise to the Most High. Send it praise to the Most High. Praise to the Most High.
This is so good, man. Oh, the little dog at the end. Bless. This is so good. Hey, by Tory and one. Yeah, this is awesome, man. He smashed it. Again, great video. I just wished Joe Budden podcast was around, man, so I could hear them trying to dissect this without getting offended and running jokes on more. It'd be so funny. But again, congrats to him. It's #7 on trending, so I guess, you can get blackballed to some extent in the industry. I'm sure you can via playlists and stuff, but most fans of music will know, if you're a fan of Tory, you're going to be checking for his music regardless. So I don't think he's losing out too much in that regard. It's just a shame in terms of sales, right? Because I think the industry probably influences first week's sales a lot more than they probably should, especially when it comes to, just your average imagine your core group of like 50,000 to 80,000 people buy your album each week, but then you also miss out on the extra 10 to 20 or maybe 30 of people that just see it on the blog, see it on see it on social media somewhere, see it kind of popping up on a banner when they open up the music app. You do lose out a lot on those kind of first time listeners, people. But anyway, as long as your fans get the music, that's all that matters really. But let's see what happens going forward. I'm interested to see if he does more videos on the album, because the other tracks are a lot more personal, have a lot more kind of direct bars involved in them. I wonder if he kind of turns this whole into like what's that R. Kelly thing? They did flip. I forgot the name of it, but the R. Kelly thing, where he essentially went through an entire. It was like the music videos were basically stitched together, right? It was an entire arc of a story. Confessions, I forgot what it was. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. But let's see if he does more videos going forward. But yeah, that's Tory Lanez Most High. Check it out. It's on YouTube. Great video. Daystar album available now on all DSPs. Next on the list here, what do we have? We have story from Coventry University. COVID-19 university students, flats, party goers flout the rules. What does that say? Coventry University, sorry, students flats, party goers close the rules. Does that make sense? Coventry University student flat party goers flout the rules. Yeah. So if you're from the UK, you should know there's no surprise, right? Coventry Uni is always known for being a little bit of a party town. I don't know why. Maybe because it's just nothing to do there, and everybody that is there is going to university or has been to uni. I don't know what it is about Coventry, but there always seems to be an issue, always something going on in there, from people nearly getting stabbed, from people getting rushed, from people going up there to pick up girls, from people going there to go party, to pick up whatever it may be, right? It seems to be the place, the mecca of all these incidents. So it should be no surprise that, Coventry of all places was a place where, the lockdown, COVID restrictions on university students on campus would be flouted. So the article says the following: up to 200 people gathered for a party at University Student Hall, flouting the rules. Police said officers had attended accommodation at Coventry University in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Officers have worked with the management of Irondale House to close some of the communal areas and increase security, Westmoreland Police said. The university is deeply concerned over the video of the party and condemned the blatant breaches of rules. And again, they're young kids, man. First year university, you're 18, between the ages of 18 and 22, you're full of so much life. I can just remember how bloody energized I felt when I was 22, man. I felt like I could literally jump off the side of a building, right, and I'd be fine. So I can only imagine if someone tells you, oh, you got to stay in your room when you're at university. Are you mad? That's not happening. It continues, said footage from the private accommodation of Whitefriars Lane emerged on social media, showing a large group of people who were apparently not adhering to the social distancing rules. Current government guidance states only 6 groups of people or fewer are allowed to meet, and students have been told they must limit socializing, staying within separate households, and be taught in managed groups. That's imagine paying all that money just to essentially go and be locked down again on campus. Like, these guys are insane if they think that's going to work. The university said it strongly condemns the blatant breaches of the rule of 6 and other guidelines as they risk the health of the students and colleagues and the communities in which they are relocated. Ian Dunn, the university's provost, described the footage as outrageous, deeply unfair. He told the BBC the university was taking the incident very seriously and he was confident the code of conduct had been breached. Again, man, I don't know how they're going to deal with it. It's not my place to say, but I just think, what did you expect, man? What did these guys expect? They wouldn't allow these guys and girls to do remote learning. Some of the universities are not currently set up to do such stuff, which is really confusing considering they get paid millions of money to essentially keep the lights on. The fact that they haven't invested in any kind of infrastructure that will allow people to learn remotely is insane. But hey, let's just go along with it and believe them. But in these crazy times, you think they make some sort of adjustment. They don't. They force people to go back to school. They take all their first week's rent, first month's rent, first term rent, take deposits. They take deposits on the halls, all this good stuff, money coming in, and then suddenly the spike in cases, surprise, surprise, lock in your room, no partying. That's not going to happen. So again, not surprised in that one. Not surprised at all. Next on the list, we have this really funny story from the BBC. Again, it said COVID quarantine breakers. It was selfish, but I don't regret it. And this is a story, or this is something that I touched upon on maybe another episode of the podcast, where I essentially said, I think now because of the increased restrictions across Europe, I think for the most part in some places in the world, it seems like the COVID-19 restrictions have increased somewhat. Governments all over the place are essentially telling people that your Christmas is over. This year is completely a wrap. Whatever holiday you had previously, you can't then go take again now because you'll have to quarantine for 14 days. So it did make me think that all those people who were basically publicly shamed at the beginning of March, April, maybe say June, July also, how now looking back on it saying, see, I told you so, it was probably the best time to go. If you didn't go on holiday, if you didn't even just go for a break, a little weekend thing to Ibiza, to Greece, if you're in Europe, to Tulum, if you're in America or other places, right? You probably missed your chance now just because of the restriction, just because of how the surge in cases is going up. And unfortunately, it was one of those occasions where you had to be selfish because you weren't going to get any direction from the government, and which either way, right, whether to go or whether to stay, right, they weren't gonna, risk giving that kind of advice, have loads of people going, the cases go up, and then be blamed for it. Like I said, this whole thing is a blame game. No one is dealing with this in a way of like through the prism of, oh, let's preserve life. They're dealing with it to make, basically saying, oh, let's ensure we don't get blamed when this is over, right? No one wants to go to the human rights tribunal at the end of this. No one wants to go to the war crimes of virology at the end of this. No one wants that. So I definitely understand why some people are like, you know what, I'm gonna flout the rules, I'm gonna go on my holiday, because if not, and if I stand around waiting for the government to decide when and when I can't do things, the next time you'll go on a trip will be flipping 2022, like for real. From the that'll be the only time the government are going to really encourage people to start going on holiday. Tourism departments are going to start putting out their propaganda and marketing. I say 2022. Until then, everyone's going to kind of play it safe. So this title from the BBC says the following: COVID quarantine breakers. It was selfish, but I don't regret it. Should we play a bit of the video? Or should we read the article? Let's read the article. She says, across the UK, normally law-abiding people are harboring a guilty secret. They are COVID holiday quarantine breakers. They travel to holiday spots where the beaches were drenched in sun, and where coronavirus infections were starting to surge. When they came home, they didn't shut themselves away for a fortnight. Instead, they broke the law. We don't know how many people have been ignoring the self-isolation law after coming back from COVID-19 hotspots, but rates of infection from people who have recently travelled overseas has been rising, says the Office of Health of National Statistics. But it's clear, anecdotally at least, that lots of people have avoided being caught, which is obviously true. I think everyone I've spoken to has travelled, especially when they've left the UK. They've had little to no sort of like procedure about clocking whether and when you went. So I don't know. So the airlines do. They get you to fill in a form specifically, blah blah, before you leave. But when you come back, there's no sort of reminder to stay at home for 14 days. You just basically you arrive when you arrive, you leave the airport, and no one knows whether or not you're going to go straight to a brothel or back to your home. There is no kind of like checking up on that regard. So there's no surprise that this is happening in this way. Again, would we as a nation be comfortable with some random person calling our mobile the second day we arrive or we're at home, checking up and making sure that we're at home, checking our geotag and all that sort of stuff? Probably not. But in terms of dealing with this virus in the best way possible, you probably need to be a little bit draconian, a little bit 1984-ish in order to kind of get it under some control. But unfortunately, because we've been so hands-offish, or the government has, Boris and his gang have been so hands-offish with stuff and have kind of espouse the idea of British common sense, it's no surprise that this is happening, right? So unless the laws are tight and strict and well defined, people will flout the rules. It is what it is. In July, Alice, a 20-something worker from Surrey, was fed up with not having to go on holiday. For the good of her own mental well-being, she says she booked the rules sitting in her garden. She confessed her crime to me. She says she booked a trip to Mallorca with a friend. Then days before she had been due to fly out, the UK slapped quarantine rules on Spain, which is, of course, at the time was annoying, but I didn't really get the outrage in that regard, because things are going to change. We're living with a virus that's essentially, killed huge swaths of the population, right? So it's things that will change on the, sometimes on a dime. It is what it is. I understand it's frustrating, but it's not that big of a deal. And to be honest, I would imagine if you do go on holiday, there has to be a part of you that there has to be a part of your brain that's like, you know what, there might be a possibility here where if I come back, the quarantine regulations might have changed. Or you should just have it in the back of your head that you're going to be in your home for 14 days regardless anyway. It shouldn't be like a thing of like, I'm going to go on holiday and just continue living my life. You should have it in your head. And again, I think under these times, you can possibly negotiate something with your employer to be like, hey, I'm going to go away. Most likely than not, if I do go away and come back, things might change. Is it okay if I work from home for like the next 14 days just in case that does happen? They could be okay, yes or no, right? But I'm sure some people are like, you know what, if I do say that, I won't go on holiday. I get it, but hey, don't be surprised. It continues here. It says, we were basically told by the holiday company that we couldn't get our money back. I didn't want to lose any other holiday and my money, so I just decided to go anyway. Okay, that's your risk. When Alice got to Mallorca, she decided the self-isolation she'd face on return would be no nonsense. The hotel was largely empty and reassuringly clean. Again, that's not the point of it. There wasn't really a time other than where we were eating on a sunbed or in a hotel room that we weren't wearing a mask. It just felt really safe. Alice believed that the virus transmission rate was very low. She was probably safer in Mallorca than England, she thought. In fact, the coronavirus infection in Mallorca had been climbing rapidly during her stay, meaning her risk of catching it had been growing day by day. I love these holiday. This is the thing that's really amazing to some of these for me. These holiday girls or people that do break these rules, they seem to be like
they seem to be completely unaware of like the climate. Like I would imagine if you're breaking rules, you kind of have an understanding what the climate is, and you're like and you're basically making a decision like, I don't care what it is. I know what the situation is, but I'm gonna break them anyway, right? But what ends up happening when you dig deep a little bit with these stories is that you end up finding people who break the rules and then try and reverse engineer why they went, right? And try and kind of give you a bit of a what's the thing called, a backseat quarterback, sort of like looking at it like, oh, okay, look, here's why I did what I did, and trying to rationalize something that you did in the moment because you were just bored and you didn't want to be at home anymore. That's okay. You're allowed to say that, right? And that's what I'm saying. You're allowed to make any decision that you want. So I think there's no point here. There's no need to shame anybody anymore. I think we're at a stage now where this virus is going to be with us until the vaccine is here, right? We've all kind of come to that realization. If that is the case, people are going to have to do what they have to do, whether it's going to have to go on road and tour, whether it's going to have to go and DJ some places, whether they're going to have to open up their business, start up a business, go and work in the store, whatever. People have to do what they have to do. It is what it is. Let people get on with their lives. But they have to do so in the knowledge that you are putting X, Y, and Z person in jeopardy. You are jeopardizing your health. These things have to be accepted too. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to stop living your life, but you have to know that those things do exist and they are going to be there no matter what decision you take. So it's really funny to see people like her, like, saying, oh, kind of, pretending to be a virologist and, knowing all the science and then essentially being completely proven wrong. But hey, she says, it continues. So what happened when she returned? She said, while her job allowed her to work from home, again, privilege of that, what absolute piece of shit, she wondered about the rest of her life. So what? 14 days is the rest of your life, you absolute bimbo. So she begins hesitantly. I isolated for a couple of days and then I just thought, you know what? I'm fine. It's like, God almighty, man. We have got, like, there are legit some like, I wouldn't say R-worded, but there are legit dum-dums in the world. Like, just dum-dums who are like, there's nothing you can do, right? If they get run over by a car, it's probably the best thing for them and their family, right? That they're not around anymore. Like, they're just going to put everybody in jeopardy. Imagine, you only have to be at home for 2 weeks. 14 days isn't even that long of a time, right? It goes by in a blip. Especially during COVID, time is just a construct during COVID, right? Time is in your imagination. Time is what you make it in during COVID times, right? We're in flipping October already, right? This isn't real. So to think that you can't do 14 days being at home is just nuts. It's nuts. In that fortnight that followed the critical period of potential transmission, Alice visited family, although not elderly relatives, went on a shopping trips and met up with her friends in their homes or local park. She is a absolute goon. She says, I just thought if I'm going to catch it anywhere, it'll be in England. People aren't following all the rules in here all the time. Oh my God. So she's like, you know what? As long as I don't catch it on holiday in Mallorca, I'll be fine. If I catch it at home, then at least I'll go in hospital. It's like, it doesn't even, anyway, continue. And you were one of them, should I point out? She says, yeah, she replies nervously. How lucky and unlucky you are to stay at home. She's not alone. Research organized by the BBC last week suggests a hardcore minority of people were not prepared to obey the rules or staying at home if the law required, while 4% of people polled by Ipsos Mori said they were very unlikely or certain not to isolate if they tested positive. That rose to 8%. Asked what they could do. They just told track and trace to self-isolate because they would be in close to contact with somebody who had tested positive. The refusings across the ages climbed by 8%. On travel, 1 in 10 said they wouldn't self-isolate after returning from a hotspot, rising to 16% from under 834s. Meanwhile, a fifth of people said it was acceptable to break the law to go to work, and a quarter said they would ignore the post-travel quarantine. And yeah, it's acceptable to go to work. If you've got dickhead employers or people that aren't going to be nice to you, right? I get it, but most employers are gonna be like, if ever there was a time to like pretend that you have some level of humanity, to pretend you have a heart, you have a soul, it's during COVID, right? There's probably some rare occasions in your office life where you get to have a really human conversation with your employees, right? Managers. When somebody in your family dies, You have a family emergency, you get married, someone's pregnant, or there's a global pandemic, right? Or some sort of terrorism attack, right? Or some sort of natural disaster. Those are the only times you get to have a little bit of a human conversation. And we're generally all going through this, right? Genuinely, we're going through a mad issue. It's not like one of those things where like, oh no, I couldn't get to work on time because it was raining in my area. No, it's fucked everywhere, right? So this is the one time where you actually get to like have an honest, humane conversation with your employer. Now, most people would agree to let you quarantine at home. Some places won't. And if they won't, cool, break the law. But to suggest that it's okay to go to shops and to go to hang out with people just because you feel like you're over it is insane. And this definitely explains why there's such a, you know, a prevalence of like sexually transmitted infections, right? STIs, STDs, whatever you call them, wherever you are. Because we have these great inventions like, you know, condoms and, you know, other instruments that you can use to prevent people from spreading diseases, right? Whatever your partner's using, they can use some things that can prevent some things. But in general, most people don't care. And it's just like, you know what? Throw it out the window, let's go raw and enjoy ourselves. And then they're surprised when they catch something. And then when they do catch something, they don't inform the person they were with prior. They carry on going on about their life, infecting a whole slew of people, right? Men, women, dogs, and cats, wherever they're touching. And then, you know, and then we're wondering why rates of flipping sexually transmitted infections are up. Like, people are nuts, man. Again, this has shown it. COVID has shown it. People are legit insane. And again, it's not even that deep of a thing. Imagine if you went somewhere and you had to quarantine for like a month, how people would be. It's 14 days, which is nothing in quarantine times. Nothing. If you do 2 days, you can easily do a week. If you do a week, you can do another week. It's not that much time. It goes by in a blip. And again, it should just be part of your thinking when you book a holiday. Like, okay, cool. I might possibly have to quarantine for 14 days. Just be in your head. No big deal. Before you leave, you get your shopping done, you stock up on some baked beans, you get your flipping liquids in, whatever you need to do to limit the amount of time you spend outdoors. You just do some common sense stuff. So then when you go on holiday, you can enjoy yourself, you can be free, have a good time, praise to the Most High, party, do your own thing. And then when you come back home, you're prepared and ready to go. But to have this idea that you're suddenly gonna, you know, you can go abroad, you can hang out, like nothing's going on. Like, no, there's something going on, my dear. Look out your window. No one's on the streets. People are dying, right? People have lost their grandmothers and haven't necessarily had a chance to bury them. Like, this is a serious thing, but hey, what do I know, man? What do I know? Next on the list here, what do we have? Oh, this is a very concerning story. So this is from CNBC. It says Disney to lay off 28,000, nearly 30,000 employees as coronavirus slams its theme park business, which is very concerning, obviously, because, you know, Disneyland, I think in America in general, they reopened in spite of the surging numbers just because I guess they need to reopen, right? I can't imagine what it costs to keep Disneyland running in any capacity, even just Disney as a company itself, day to day, especially without the untold people visiting and coming in from all over the place, right? They need to keep it open. It is what it is, right? But god damn it, man. Imagine still opening up in spite of COVID and then still having to lay off 30,000 people is nuts. So it's the following. There's just a couple there, you know, adults going to Disneyland, count me out. I think if ever there was, this is the thing too, because I think it's another example of like people having no shame and people never feeling embarrassed, and oversharing on social media. This is another example of the fact that some people just don't feel like there is an age to things, there is age appropriate things, and this is one of them. There has to be a limit to the age that you're allowed to go to Disneyland. I don't know whether it's 25, 35, 45. There has to be an age where you're not allowed to go on your own without kids. Or without, you know, or without young children, whether they're family members or people that you're just looking after, whatever. Or if there's a service that you can bloody rent a kid and take them to Disneyland and pretend they're yours, whatever. You should not be allowed to go to Disneyland on your own as an adult just because you want to have fun and walk around after a certain age. It should be looked down upon. It should be. You're an adult, grow up. Go and, I don't know, clean the yard, organize your garage. I don't know, fix that light bulb you were meant to get to. Do something. But going to Disneyland as a grown-up is nuts. But what do I know? Continues. Prolonged closures of Disneyland California-based theme parks and limited attendance at its open Parks has forced the company to lay off 28,000 employees across its parks, experiences, and consumer products division, the company said. In a memo sent to employees on Tuesday, Josh D'Amaro, head of parks at Disneyland, detailed several difficult decisions the company had to make in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, including ending its furlough of thousands of employees. God damn it. Shares of the company fell less than 2% after the closing bell on Tuesday. Around 67% of the 28,000 laid off workers were part-time employees. That's the pain of it, right? So does you think to yourself, like, isn't it possible for them just to maybe, curtail the salary of some of the C-suite executive board people at Disney, and then sort of like, be able to then supplement the incomes of the part-time employees? Like, does it make up that much of a salary? It probably does, I'm assuming. Don't get me wrong, I don't own a business. I'm sure 28,000 people's salaries, or 60, or was that 60%? Over half of 28,000 that are part-time does account for a lot, of money that you're having to kind of put out. But surely those cuts can be made to people that probably can afford it, as opposed to people that you literally are surviving on that Disneyland check. You would hope so. Anyway, it continues. The company declined to break down the layoffs by individual park locations. While Disney theme parks in Florida, Paris, Shanghai, Japan, and Hong Kong have been able to reopen limited capacity, both California and Adventure Disneyland have remained shuttered in Anaheim, California. Actually, let me get this because this thing keeps jumping up and down. Hit this thing. Let's get rid of that. While the free park in Atlanta, as you can imagine, it says here, the AMRA decision of its magnitude it was not easy. In a memo to employees obtained by CNBC, for the last several months, our management has worked tirelessly to avoid having to separate anyone from the company. We've cut expenses, suspended capital projects, furloughed our cast members while still paying benefits, and modified our operations to run effective as possible. However, we simply cannot responsibly stay fully staffed while operating at certain limited capacity, which is true. I guess, to be fair to them, they tried what they can try within whatever remit they can. There's maybe there is acknowledgement that, because if it was me, I would much rather cut the salaries of people on the board or an executive level, and then sort of like supplement that to pay the part-time employees. But there is probably this idea in business that if you do cut the quote unquote fat, or the people that can be replaced, some people, sorry to say, in entry level positions, they're easily replaceable. There's also this idea that when you do get back up and running, you're going to need those high functioning executives at the top to get the business back where it needs to be, right? You need them. Those people more so than entry level people. I would assume so. But it's just a shame, innit? Do you know what I mean? Especially during these tough times, the part-time employees are the ones that get punished before the actual people that work, that probably do the least day to day, I would say. But again, who knows, right? Because we're not in the office, we don't know what these guys are actually doing. The parks, experiences, and consumer product segment is vitally important part of Disney's business. Last year, it accounted for 37 of the company's 69 billion in total revenue. Jesus Christ. Disney has been hemorrhaging money since the outbreak began. In the second quarter, the company reported a loss of 1 billion in operating income due to the closure of parks, hotels, and cruise lines. Yeah, right. See, all three of those things that Disneyland makes, or Disney makes money on, they require humans to be at, right? Which is really kind of a pain point in a business, considering, I don't know, does anybody watch the Disney Plus? Do you watch it, the streaming service? I don't have it. I've never signed up to it. It's pretty cheap, I've heard, but supposedly, I kind of got put off when they started to edit some of the cartoons and take off some of the racier stuff, from back in the day, because it didn't match up with the humor we have now. I'm not really down for that. I think you just leave things as they are. If people don't want to watch it, maybe put a trigger warning or a parental advisory thing on board of it. But them messing around with certain things just kind of got on my nerves. But it is concerning for a company that they're not future proof, in that they only make money on things that people can actually go to physically, especially in this digital world we live in, right? They don't have for instance, I wouldn't buy it, but I'm not sure people would buy a fucking Disney smartphone pre-installed with games and series that you can watch or whatever it may be, custom made skins and cases and shit. Someone would buy that, right? But everything they have has to involve people actually going to things physically. Parks, hotels, and cruise liners. That's insane. Again, the money is probably high, because for each person that goes to a park, let's say, what would you say the average spend of each person that goes to Disneyland is? It's probably within the hundreds, isn't it? Right? The average spend, like one person, forget if they have kids. Imagine if they're one of those losers that go to Disneyland as an adult, right? They're probably spending $100 plus. So there is a lot of money to be made on that, right? And the idea is that you take a picture at Disneyland, you share it on your social, other people see it, they want to go. So you're doing a lot of free marketing for them too. So I'm sure they get a lot of recurring customers coming through, and people coming through recommendations of friends. But when there's no ability to stand in place with people or gather in big groups, their business is completely dead, and that's really a bad sign for them going forward. They definitely need to address that. Whether it's kind of expanding on the video on demand stuff, expanding on the streaming stuff, expanding on maybe creating hardware, whatever it may be, they need to definitely expand their revenue stream, because you can't just be relying on bloody parks, hotels, and bloody cruise liners in 2020. That's insane. Diarmo and his team have been working to persuade California state legislators to provide guidelines for reopening the parks. Last week, the company provided a media update to highlight the success it's seen in its Florida parks and internationally in Paris, Shanghai, and Japan. The virtual update also showcased the updated safety measures in its place already. These policies include requiring masks, having sanitation stations widely available, online mobile ordering for meals, and cashless pay. That's all great, but I'm sorry, man. The habit, this is the problem a lot of these businesses are going to have. Just the habit changes, right? The fact that even the people that do go to Disneyland usually, due to the pandemic, will probably be put off from going. They'll be like a little bit, they'll be put off from going, in it. They'll just be like, you know what? Unless it's a vaccine, I'm not going to a place where a lot of people are hanging out. And if there's one thing I've heard being repeated ad nauseum about Disneyland, is that, Disney in general, most of the places that you have to go to in person, the queues are always insane. So you can just imagine how that person will probably feel having been there, right? Especially if you've been there yourself. You're like, you know what, I could probably do without going to a Disney thing for the time being. Disney's coronavirus was have been exasperated by California state unwillingness to lift restrictions that would allow Disney to reopen, which is true. Governor Gavin Newsom outlined a new 4-tier reopening framework in late August for easing restrictions depending on the level of COVID, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, hard times, man. Again, hard goes out to everybody working at Disney, and it's been going to be a hard time, I think, in general going forward. It's unlikely they're going to get back to operating how they were prior unless there's a vaccine. For the most part, most businesses that are in that sort of frame in terms of having people attend places in person are going to suffer. But again, maybe it's a lesson to be learned for those working in those kind of places to diversify your ability to make money, which is dumb to say, really, because these jobs are probably the lifeblood of families going forward. And I know how hard, I would imagine it's pretty difficult to get Disneyland a Disney part-time job anyway. For you to lose it during these tough times is going to be brutal regardless. So maybe no lessons to be learned there. It's just a hard pill you have to swallow during these tough times. It is what it is. But again, I would have hoped some of the executive people would have made more of a would sacrifice more of their salary in order to keep some of these part-time employees. But I assume that probably wasn't something that's ever going to be in their remit. And again, maybe it's a chance for them to change their business model, right? You can't just be operating with just parks and bloody cruise liners in 2020 and onwards. It has to be more than that, I would say. Anyway, move on. What else we have to talk about here? Let's just go through this. We're about an hour through. Oh yeah, this is funny, right? So it's really, really good interview with this guy called Mike Binder, who's essentially putting together a comedy store documentary. Have you seen it? Right, it's a documentary he's putting together, right, about the comedy store that you've probably heard about 1,000 times from loads of different people within the LA comedy scene. They talk about it ad nauseum. They talk about it like it's a flipping army SEALs boot camp, which it probably is, right? To be fair to them, right, it probably has a lot of benefits to running your show on there, being part of the community, continuing on the legacy of all the legends that are passed through there. It looks really cool, the actual trailer for it. Let me get it up on here actually so we can watch a bit of it now, because why not? I'm probably going to get yanked on YouTube for the clip and playing the Tory Lanez thing anyway. But let's see here, comedy store documentary. Let's see if I can put it. It's like a series, I think, in it as well. It's going to be a series on Showtime. I think they're going to put it out in episodes, which is a good idea to keep people's attention. I think if you put it out in one chunk, people are just going to smash through it. But it's called The Comedy Store, official trailer. I'll play it now for you now.
It's amazing to be back at the Comedy Store all these years later.
I'm going through a breakup next week. My boyfriend tried to talk on that joke. He came up to me and was like,
Annie Lederman, one of my favorite comedians within that girl sphere, and someone that seems a little bit, she seems as normal as it can be for an LA comic. It happens to be a female, right? The whole Whitney Cummings, Crystalia thing kind of showed her true colors and how some of those people are a bit, a little bit cuckoo. But Annie Lederman seems to be really, really cool. I like her comedy. I think she's an expert joke writer.
I don't like that joke. I was like, well, a little awkward. It's not about you.
The first time I went on stage at the Comedy Store, I cried.
There she is.
Light is right on you.
Like a dagger.
This hurts so much. Why do I stay?
I don't think that there's a building that has affected culture more than the store.
Yo, Brandon, legend.
I grew up here my whole life. Is this the coolest place? Think about
it. Just miss making people happy.
Holy Shaw, nice.
Any comic that ever inspired me all worked here.
Wow.
Richard,
Whoopi Goldberg,
Bill Burr,
Robin, Jim Carrey,
Michael Keaton,
Chappelle,
Letterman, Leno, Kinnison.
This lineup is nuts.
Anyway, you get the drill, right? It's going to be a really great special, a really great documentary TV series sort of thing. What are they called? Docu-series, I think they're called, right? It's going to be available on Showtime. I think it's premiering on Sunday, so definitely check that out and keep an eye out for that. But anyway, the director, Mike Binder, was on the Bill and Bert show, and he made a really funny comment that really made me laugh, and there's maybe a bit of an explanation as to some of the more questionable actions we've seen we've seen since lockdown with some of the comedians and especially in my field with DJs and dance music. It's definitely sort of like highlighted some of the more questionable aspects of some people's personalities, especially when you take away what they do day to day and they have to kind of function and operate in real life and communicate outside of what they do because they can't do what they do. They can't DJ, they can't stand up, they can't do stand up as normal, or especially in the beginning of the pandemic. And Mike Binder makes a really clever point here, which definitely illustrates some of the issues that you might have seen these people going through on social media, and essentially kind of explains a little bit of it. And yeah, let's just hear what he has to say, and I'll explain a bit what I think of it in the end. But this is Mike Binder on the Bill and Bert podcast. Again, a great podcast, only for the fact that he kind of makes Bert tolerable. I think he probably is his best self alongside Bill. He kind of keeps him a little bit more sane and stops with the whole grandiose me stories. But it's a really good dynamic between the both of them. I really, really like this podcast.
Shows.
I get it, but I'm just saying. To me, but and you talk to Rogan, and you know, other than Leno and Letterman, there was nothing at the Comedy Store before him. He has no idea about me. He has no idea about any comedians. I get there.
I like how uneasy they all look. Bill's got that kind of dead eye stare. Bert's awkwardly moving around his mouth. Like they mentioned Joe Rogan, right? You know, the mafia boss of the Comedy Store in LA, or the comedy scene in LA, and everyone's sort of getting a little bit touchy. But to be honest, he's being very respectful and kind of making a pretty good point about just the lack of, I guess, knowledge that people have about whatever's come before them, which you see happen a lot, especially during the peak era of like the SoundCloud rap scene, or the SoundCloud rap, right? Especially in hip hop, where a lot of those kids were blowing up off of one song on SoundCloud, were getting $1 million deals, becoming multi-millionaires overnight, and then shitting on everything that came before them because they felt as if, oh, because I made it so quickly, it goes to prove that I wouldn't say they thought they were better, but they just thought it was irrelevant to even know who Biggie, to even know who Tribe Called Quest were, to even know all these greats that came before them, because why would I care? Because I just made this out of the, you know, spontaneity. It just came out of my brain, right? And I put it up on SoundCloud. So why would I need to listen to a KRS-One? And then of course you've got these older guys who are in the scene who are a little bit bitter, a little bit annoyed that they weren't able to make the money they're able to make nowadays, right? You know, because obviously the scene has moved on, the sound has kind of captivated the entire planet, if you believe the statistics, that it's, you know, maybe the number one listened genre in the world, blah 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 blah. The same thing probably happens in comedy, right? Where, you know, kids or guys and girls get up there on stage, and because they smash it and kill it, they just assume no one else came before them, and you know, they don't really do their history or do their homework.
There, and I'm telling Peter Shore, you know, the whole story about how when I got in a fight with his mother and she took down my neon sign on the wall, which he knew, and to be nice, he puts my sign back up on the wall because, you know, I did an HBO special and George Carlin produced it, right? And Mitzi wanted to produce it. She took my neon sign down, she took my name off the wall, and Rogan has a shit fit, okay, apparently. Why the fuck is this guy producing this documentary? Why the fuck is this guy put a neon sign up for this fucking guy I've never heard of?
Yeah,
like, he doesn't know anything about.
Yeah, awkward they were getting. I love how awkward they were getting. Look at Better's face, like, oh my god, what are you doing? You know, he's a squeaky voice saying though. Look how awkward he's getting.
So the new guys know nothing about the old guys other than Leno and Letterman, and Leno and Letterman know nothing about the new guys. And I'm the guy in the middle that knows the two things, right? And which is kind of an interesting place to be. And you realize that that's the way it is, you know, the generations, as much as everybody adores the store, the generations and talks about how great the store is, comics are so fucking narcissistic and so into themselves. And
say that to DJs too. Same thing with DJs. And I honestly do think like a lot of the issues that we're seeing about this is, especially with the DJs and the business techno guys, is that we don't see them as humans. We just see them in front of a stage or in a corner somewhere of a dark club. And then as soon as you take away their ability to do that one thing that they do, and they have to kind of function in society and talk to people and basically, express themselves, they're always going to sound a little bit me-ish, a little bit narcissistic, a little bit blinkers on, because that's the only thing they've had to worry about for the last 15 years, if whatever professional career they've had. They've not had to worry about anyone else apart from themselves. Everything revolves around them. They're in the agency, that revolves around them. The booking man revolves around them. The person that, meets them up for a gig rolls around them, the hotel rolls around them, the girls, the booze, the alcohol, it's all them. So remember, they have to step out of themselves and be a little bit more altruistic and a little bit more community minded. It just doesn't compute, right? They don't understand, like, why wouldn't I go there? Like, they're paying me to go to a festival, I'm gonna go play the festival. I don't care if it's pandemic. They want me to go. It's my time. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of idea. So it does make complete sense. But I do honestly think you definitely get to see the DJs or the comedians that are actually going to make you, actually going to go to the next level, are the ones that are able to reference the people that come before them, because they're able to see what was done prior, because nothing is new under the sun. Everything's been done before that you existed, obviously in different ways, but it's been done prior. So if you're able to go back into the archives, back into the history books, you can gain more understanding. It's going to inform what you're doing now. And it's not about copying. Of course you can copy until you find your own voice, but it's about understanding where whatever you're doing has come from, so that you don't repeat the mistakes of old, and you also learn from the stuff that they've done and kind of build on the good stuff they've done in order to kind of make you a better artist, make you a better creative, or whatever it may be.
In their world, I'm interviewing this comic Annie Letterman, and I'm
Big up Annie.
She has no idea of any comedians other than herself.
And that is so accurate for all DJs. It's the same. They don't know anyone apart from them. Everything revolves around them. Like, you look at what Chris Liebling got involved with, you look at the Jamie Jones thing, the Eric Murillo issue, you look at the stuff that was occurring to some extent with the Sarah King girl, even though I thought that was completely out of order. You look at the stuff that's happening recently with Rebecca and her kind of, for the music hashtag thing. It's all me. Oh God, you gotta love it. There actually should be a DJ out there called that, right? Called me. It just carries on. There must be one. Someone must exist, or DJ I. It's something like that has to exist, right? That kind of DJ, like when they just go up and play whatever they want to play. They don't care about how people are dancing on the dance floor. They make what they like. It's all about them. They, they say fuck you, pay me, and they keep it moving. That person needs to exist.
I'm talking about David Brenner, Richard Pryor.
That is so Annie Letterman. That is so.
Look at Bert trying to like diffuse it and be nice.
Oh, Annie Letterman.
Carlin, I'm going. He goes, I have no idea who you're talking about.
It's brilliant, man. I definitely recommend you check the whole interview out. It's absolutely brilliant. He kind of dives a lot on the scene. He kind of comes from it from a very funny point of view, of course, because he used to be a stand-up himself. He's also a director, so he's got that kind of air of artistic director, creative director about him, where he's able to kind of analyze things from like a bird's eye view point of view, and just generally seems to be like a decent kind of humor. It doesn't take itself too seriously. He busts balls. So I'm sure a lot of the exchanges were kind of taken out of context, and he sort of removes the things that he said in order to trigger some people in it. But it's definitely a good one, and I recommend as well checking out that Comedy Store documentary or docuseries once it lands very, very soon. Next on the list. Oh, we got this funny story, right, from The Hill, that supposedly Kylie Jenner's Instagram post sparked a 1,500% or 1,500% user increase to voter registration site. Absolutely insane. Now, obviously, the elections coming up in the US are probably the most important elections of the whatever nonsense they talk about, right? But it's just in terms of societally, it probably is, and in terms of just the temperature of that country overall, of that nation, they probably do need somebody as dour, dead behind the eyes and close to their deathbed as a Joe Biden, just so they can take away from the drama, right? 2020 is a hard enough year as it is without having your president coming out saying some wild shit that Trump says. It's just too much, right? Even if he does do some good stuff, just as a person, the way he carries himself, it probably might make some sense for... It probably does make sense for the American public to be like, you know what, we probably need to get this guy out of office. Cool, I understand that kind of point of view. But I really have an issue with these celebrities telling average everyday folk to make sure you register to vote and go out there, make your voices heard, and all this sort of like virtue signaling bullshit. Voting is a ball ache. It is, right? Let's just call it a spade a spade. Voting isn't flipping, it's not as easy as they're making it out, right? You have to take time off of work. You have to go to a bloody library or to a coffee shop or to a community center somewhere that you've never been, a place that you've never bothered to visit outside of where you're going to bring identification with you or bring that letter that they sent you prior to you getting your card. It's such a ball ache. It's annoying. It's like going to open up a bank account in a bank, right? It's just going to take up half of your day. You don't get any from it. It's a bullshit incident. I understand. So for these celebrities to go out their way to tell us, oh, to vote, make sure you register to vote. It's like, yeah, cool, but I have to feed my kid, right? My husband lost his job. My car got towed. I have bigger things to worry about than voting. It's mad to say that, but that is the case. But there also is this weird understanding, especially in America more so, I'd assume, because they're celebrity obsessed, that celebrities have a really, really, they have a very disproportionate influence on the current affairs or the political climate in America. It's insane that Kylie Jenner's Instagram post of her laying around in her amazing mansion in this tight bikini with her body looking fabulous, covered in some sort of, gel and glowing ointment, is somehow going to spark the user increase in registration. But it actually did. This from The Hill says the following. It says here, a non-partisan voter registration organization said it saw a surge in users visiting its voter registration and verification tool after reality TV and makeup mogul Kylie Jenner, right, the baby in a manger, as Tory Lanez said, looking like an angel, included a link to the online resource along in the Instagram post encouraging her followers to vote. Jenner linked to a vote.org online tool in the Instagram bio and directed her 196 million followers. 196 million. That is just insane. Insane to have that many followers online. Just imagine what she must make just on, because I know for myself, right, I've got 2,000 followers on Instagram, and I always get these unsolicited emails from, or DMs from brands and stuff. Oh, you want to wear this stuff? All this sort of bullshit, right? So I can imagine that's probably part of a tool where they sort of are able to kind of hit up, micro influence people that have followers under 5,000, under 10, So there must be a certain threshold where if you get up a certain number, you just have to you just generate this kind of income because certain brands hit you up because they want to advertise Flat Tummy Tea or whatever it may be. So imagine what she must make just on Instagram alone from people telling her to hey, post you standing around with this water bottle, post you standing around with this teeth whitening thing. Imagine what she just make from that. Forget what she does with her makeup line, what she does with her clothes, what she does with her TV appearances and all that other stuff. Just what she must make on Instagram alone must be insane. Madness. So it says here, let's actually go to the post actually. Let's view the post. Why not? Where's the post? There it is, right here. So this is her post on Instagram where she's looking fabulous. And it says here the following captions but are you registered to vote? Click the link in the bio. And she's looking mad, tighter than tight in her flipping bikini in this amazing kind of couch setup thing she's got on the outside of her amazing mansion. Just looking fabulous, right? Great way to kind of advertise. Again, what's tagged here? Kylie Skin, of course, that glistening product that's making herself look amazing. And what's the aesthetic? I don't know what that is. Is that like a gym person? Who is that? Saviana Aesthetics. What is that? Is that like a makeup thing? What is that? Is that like a mood? Is that what is that? It's not makeup. Is it a plumper? I have no idea what that is. What is it? What they do? What's that lip thing about? Happy filler day. Okay, they do lip injections and stuff. I don't know what they do. Who cares? But anyway, that one post that Kylie Jenner posted sparked again the resurgence of votes. And again, it's unfair the amount of influence celebrities have in politics or in just world affairs in general. But it's great to see them using their platform to get regular everyday folk to do some, to do some good in the world. But it does get a bit annoying when you have celebrities who have all the time in the world lounging around on their sunbeds, looking tan, looking hot, to tell you working 3 jobs to try and keep the light on to register to vote. Like, look, I know I have registered to vote, I get it, but I'll get around to it when I'm ready to get around to it. I don't need you to tell me to do stuff. Do you know what I mean? Just look hot and keep doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? That's the annoying part of it, I'd say. But yeah, congratulations to her, man. And then I thought to myself, you know what's that bloody house look like? And then of course I typed it in. And I was like, God damn, that headline. Kylie Jenner's house reportedly dropped 36.5 million on this house that she's got. And I'm guessing this is the same home that all the nonsense happened with Megan Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez. So an absolutely legendary household. And look at that. Just look at what that looks like, right? Amazing wall structure on the outside. It looks a little bit Drake-ish on the inside, but I love the fact that it's got this mad sort of like open pool, sort of like beach house things on the outside with a little gym in there. It looks fabulous, doesn't it? The dining room, the wet, what's the wet bar? I guess it's where you go and drink and shit, right? The game room, the wet bar. Look at that, the pool area and these little square little bits that you can kind of chill in. 36.5 million. God damn it, man. God bless that family, innit? Let me get a tissue 1 sec. Forgive me, it's the allergies once again, as per usual. You know the vibes. You know the vibes. You know the vibes. Okay, let's move on. Let's go through a couple more because we're already approaching some long period of time here. What else to talk about? Oh, this is cool, right? This is a story from Hypebeast. It says, skateboarding dreams, TikToker 42 Dogface 208 giving $1,000 donations. So of course I'm sure most of you have seen these videos of this amazing dude skateboarding on the highway somewhere, listening to Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, an epic song, a song that I play all the time in my DJ sets. It's usually an ender or a start or a primer to a set, or when you want to change the tempo you sort of lower it down again. When you want to go between different genres, I usually have a kind of a bit of a what would you call it, I throw a monkey wrench into a set and play something offhand, some country song, some jazz tune, something classical, just to kind of clear the dance floor, cleanse the palette, and then start again. Dreams by Fleetwood Mac is definitely my go-to, something that I've always played. So to see a guy like himself have such fun with it while skating down the highway, drinking a fresh beverage, was epic, and it really brought a smile to my face. I've seen this thing a million times, this video, but every time you play it you just have to smile.
Here you go again, you say you want your freedom. Well, who am I to keep you down?
Look at him having so much fun. Yeah.
It's only one thing to play the way you feel it.
There's nothing worse than skating like this and then hitting a little pebble and then boop, you're flipping over the top. But yeah, congrats to him. He smashed it, of course, and then he caught up with TMZ and basically said that he's got thousands of pounds in donations from people, which has been amazing because I think he was living without gas or something. He has some crazy stories. So it's great to see social media doing some good in some respects. So it's here.
Right now I've gotten over 10,000 plus. It's crazy, you know what I mean? Like I said, I don't know how many donations are going to keep coming in, but like I said, it's a blessing in itself. I want to get my mom a little bit for sure. So right now I know I'm going to give her 5,000 and I'm going to surprise her with that. So that's going to be cool. I'm going to do a YouTube video about it.
Wow. Well, good look. Well, good lie.
Mine right now, like I said, it doesn't have water. I'm plugged into my brother's,
He lives in an RV, right? So absolute gentleman. And look how rich in spirit this guy is. Maybe not monetarily rich, but just look at his vibe, right? How cool of a dude he is, right? Just again, sometimes in life sometimes you go through some really hard times and you think you're going through it alone. but then you put up this one random video and people see the joy in your heart. They see that you might not have much means, that you're just enjoying yourself in this pure moment of bliss. And I think I've had that. It's getting goosebumps actually listening to this now, talking to myself about this. But this is part of the reason why music is so powerful, right? This ability to sort of connect with people, right? Regardless of where they're from, right? Regardless of their backgrounds. They're able to somehow resonate with him and see and identify exactly the feeling that you had during that time. It might be that time where you wake up, you find some money on the floor, or you get a call from somebody that you hadn't seen in ages, or you just have a really good day and just like you're feeling yourself. You whack on a tune, it comes on at the perfect time. You're like, rotted, right? You're skating down the street like, yes, yes, yes. And this is one of them.
You know, house and everything. I use the bathroom and everything over there. I just need a space in my own where I can cook and clean, shower and shit.
I love him.
It's crazy. I'm looking to get a new car. My car right now has 300 and something thousand miles on it, running strong. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's got some creaks in it, but it's strong. I was coming to work, and like I said, my car, it just shuts off sometimes. You know, the battery, I don't know what it is. It just shuts off. So it shut off, and I was like, man, I got less than like 15 minutes to get to work. What am I gonna do? You know, and I always have my longboard in there, so in case I run out of gas or something. So I just jumped on my longboard. I was like, I'll just come back and figure it out after work. Started going to work, and then on my way to work, we have a little turnaround spot, you know, off the turnpike or whatever it is, whatever it's called, off the highway. So then I decided, you know, this would be perfect for a video, you know what I mean? And then @_Matt18, I think that's his name. You know, I seen him do a video before skating with cranberry juice, and I had my cranberry juice with me because that's my drink. And so I was like, you know what, might as well do it. Yeah, the cranberry raspberry. I love that juice, you know what I mean? Ocean Spray, if they would reach out to me and be like, yo, dude, let's do a commercial, you know, we'll shoot you some money, or, you know, we'll do whatever you guys do, you know, in Hollywood, or whatever it is you guys pay, you know, I don't know, you know, like I said, I just want to say that I'm down for it, you know what I mean? And whatever, I'm ready, let's go.
That would be so cool if that juice company reached out to him. Again, more vibes out to him. That video always brings a smile to my face. I watch it. It's come on my timeline a million times, and I never skip it. Always watch it. It does bring smiles, especially during these hard times. Help this guy if you can. Amazing, amazing story. Let's continue. Oh yeah, this just broke, right? So this is a story that broke just now on social, which is definitely been odd to say the least, but something again that's maybe a symptom of our times, and maybe a further illustration as to how disconnected celebrities are from regular everyday life. Chrissy Teigen has been somebody that I've kind of been a little bit annoyed by in general on social, right? She's just a bit of a nuisance, like constantly tweeting, constantly oversharing things that she's going through in her life, and just generally being a bit too much of an open book. But I get it. I think I mentioned it prior. I think I understand when you're a celebrity, or when you're somebody of some kind of notoriety, as she was in her previous life being a model, and then suddenly you become attached or associated with somebody that's a bigger celebrity than you are, in John Legend, and your identity, you kind of lose it in that transition, and you then have to find a new one, right? Because you can't be a model anymore, or you're not bothered to be a model, or that kind of door kind of shuts for you because, you know, Hollywood and entertainment industry for some odd reason seems to discard women a lot more quicker than it does with men. Whatever happens, you have to shift and kind of find a new ID for yourself. And sometimes the only way to find that new ID is to maybe just get on social and just overshare, right? Just kind of make everyone care about your life when they don't necessarily care. And that's kind of a skill in some respects, which she's done in some respects, right? Because you think to yourself, what other talent does she have as apart from being just a human? Nothing, right? Even the cooking thing, it's not really an ability. It's something that she's probably had to kind of learn to kind of love over the time, because you've got nothing else better to do. And then she goes for a really serious issue, such as the one I've got here on the screen, where it says the headline is Chrissy Teigen and John Legend lose their child after pregnancy complications. And you're like, rah, your heart goes out to the woman. But then you go through the post and you see what she's posted, and you see the black and white image, and you see the massive caption that's obviously been edited and written up in a certain way, and you're like, God almighty, man, you went through such a serious issue where you lost a child, and you're essentially doing a photo shoot in the hospital, which obviously you could say is obviously to some sort of way of normalizing people losing child, posting whatever, right? Normalizing whatever issue women go through. But I don't think this is normalizing anything. I think women do go through these issues day to day who aren't in a privileged position to have some of the best healthcare, the best health professionals looking after them. They do it completely alone. They do it sometimes without fanfare, without attention, and to somehow turn this into an event to promote yourself and an event to market yourself seems really gross. Now again. I understand that sometimes grief is a weird thing, right? It makes you do crazy stuff. People sometimes can go through some really gut-wrenching loss in the family, and the only way that they know how to react, or they know the way how to respond, is to sometimes overshare and sometimes do some things that don't necessarily make the best of sense, right? But I honestly think like sharing a picture such as this, and another one I think of John hugging her in the bed and some shit, it just seems odd. If ever there was a time to be private and to kind of you know, deal with things behind closed doors without letting the world know, this would be it. This would be it. Having a picture of you crying and sobbing on the side of a bed whilst you've lost a child in such drastic circumstances, especially when you think about all the fervor and all the kind of hullabaloo around her getting pregnant in the first place, tracking the entire thing, documenting every stage of it. It just seems so bizarre. But again, it's just another representation of just how nutty celebrity culture has got, especially during COVID, especially during the pandemic, when legitimately they can't do their everyday thing, right? You can't do your daily thing that you do because the world is shut down. So in order to kind of keep the eyes on you, to keep people interested in what you do, you're having to overshare parts of your life that should never be broadcast in this fashion whatsoever. If TMZ broke this story, people would have been annoyed. If TMZ broke a story that Chrissy Teigen lost her baby, TMZ would be like, oh my God, what the fuck are they doing? But instead, she decides to tell her story first, and we're meant to kind of somehow have sympathy for her and be really sad about it. Of course, you can be sad about it if you're invested in her, but you don't know the person, right? This kind of faux sort of sympathy that people lay out for people you don't know is really bizarre too, because I'm sure there's people in your own life, people within your own family, that would much rather receive a call or receive a word of sympathy from you than some random stranger celebrity person that you're never going to meet, that's never going to be friends with you, and that you're most likely never going to emulate. So again, very bizarre, very odd way to go about things. But again, I think it's a symptom of celebrity culture in general. I guess I would say my heart goes out to them, but again, I don't know them and I don't necessarily care. But I think it's definitely a cautionary tale as to, you have to watch how much you share, because if you keep sharing, there is going to come a point in time where you won't know if you've crossed the line. And I truly think this is the time where she definitely crossed the line, because again, it's a big wake up call. I remember my wake up call in these sort of things, oversharing on social media, because again, we didn't grow up with social in a way that kids are growing up with it now. But I remember once one of our close friends died in a very unfortunate circumstances, right? I think it was some sort of gang war line. Let's say it was a gang fight, right? One of our close friends unfortunately ended up passing away, the first friend in that group that ended up passing away in such extent. And then of course, because of the prevalence of gang violence within the neighborhood I live in, and knife crime, we essentially became numb to it, right? There wasn't any much hullabaloo about people passing away, which is a story in itself. But I remember that person passing away, and it was their funeral, and we were all distraught about it, trying to process our feelings. And we went to the funeral, and as they were putting the casket in the ground, I took out my phone and I was gonna video record it, right? And I was taking pictures. This is a time when I was, you know, posting on social, like I was treating Instagram like, or whatever we were using at the time, like mobile uploads, right? Or like Facebook, just uploading everything I was doing. Every waking moment I kind of woke up. My every waking moment was documented online in some way, shape or form. That was kind of an essential of social media for me. And I remember one of my friends noticing as I was taking a picture of the casket going into the ground where everyone's sobbing in tears, and he nudged me, he's like, what are you doing? And instantly in that moment, I realized, oh shit, right, I shouldn't be doing this. All it took was a nudge from somebody to say like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? Put your phone down, man. Like, have some decorum, have some respect. Do you know what I mean? Like, read the room. I was like, ah, shit, yeah, my bad. And since then, I've never in my life done such a thing ever again. But again, it takes one person to nudge you out of your reality. And the question is, at this moment, is that do celebrities, do people like Chrissy Teigen, do these Jamila Jamils, these self-absorbed, narcissistic people like, I don't know, like Alyssa Milano, do they have those people in their life? Do they have people in their life who are just regular folk who can say, hey, you're bugging out, you're being psychotic, you're being crazy, what are you doing? Like, have some comments, have some decency about you, put your phone down, let's have a drink, whatever. Do they have those people in their life? I don't think so. Everyone in their life sort of benefits from them. For instance, from agents to managers, they all benefit from them oversharing and from them making a quote unquote fool of themselves in public, because inadvertently that's going to add to their bottom line. So they're never going to discourage them from not being personable and not sharing their journey and all this nonsense. They're going to obviously encourage it in some way, shape or form. But this is really heartbreaking. Like, why is this woman sharing this information with us? Like, why do we know this? Like, honestly, why do we know this, and why do we know this in such detail? Fair enough, you have to kind of get the story out there yourself because you're a celebrity. You might want to put out some word from a PR, from an agency, and just feed it to the, you know, to the platforms. But why is she posting this herself? And it's odd. It's flipping bizarre. I really find it odd. For the time you're going through this heartbreak, for someone to, again, I wouldn't even have the time, opportunity to take a picture. I don't know who took the picture. Was it a husband or somebody else? Who knows? But regardless, it's very odd, very strange. And I guess it's a symptom of our times. But hey, that's why I'm so happy that I'm not a celebrity. Like, you know, fuck that, man. Like, imagine living a life where you feel like you have to share those kind of things anyway in the first place. Like, nah. Anyways, continue here. What's we talk about? Oh, okay. Oh yeah, let's admit this one. Let's end on here. Yeah, it's ended on here actually. So Brendan sat down with Steve-O and Chappelle Lacey and Malik. I'm assuming his name is right. Another episode of Firing a Kid. You know, they're deputizing for Brian Callen as he's going through what he's going through. And it was just, they had a really funny exchange during the podcast I'm going to play here, which essentially illustrates, I think, some of the reasons why people hate Brendan Schaub, and maybe a reason why he necessarily hasn't recovered from that hate and how he could possibly turn it around. Because I think as much as people like to rag on the guy, I still think he's okay in small doses. I think if your whole media intake revolves around him, he can get a little bit exhausting in the same way that Bert Kreischer can get exhausting, right? Where he kind of is a bit self-absorbed. He's a little bit psychotic. You know, his rationalizing of his alcohol abuse can sometimes get a bit annoying. Brendan going on consistently about his diet can get annoying, about the fat kid bike club, whatever it's called, right? It just gets nuts. His shitty MMA opinions because he doesn't watch it too much because he's got his own, you know, personal issues regarding the UFC and how they dealt and how they kind of treated him, because you understand, but you're kind of having to suffer from it, be listening to his MMA broadcasts and blah 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 blah. But I think in small doses the guy is pretty decent, but unfortunately the only way he was going to kind of evolve from this kind of hate everything Brendan does period is if he's able to understand where some of the kind of vitriol and some of the negative energy that kind of gets thrown at him kind of comes from. And I think this kind of clip here from Steve-O explains a little bit of the origin story of why people hate Brendan Schaub, and it's, I think, them kind of discussing his special, I think, for some extent, right? Let me play a little bit of clip here. Big up the homeless cats for uploading this one. That's annoying. That was annoying. Hopefully it's not cut out and it's still recording. I think it is still recording, so there's a microphone. You can probably still hear me. Yep, you can probably still hear me. Okay, cool. Let's continue there. Let's continue. So, I'm probably going to cut the first bit. Anyway, let's continue. I had a bit of a technical fault there at the moment, so let's continue here. So, I'm going to go over it one more time. This was Steve-O talking on the T-Fat-K, the Brendan Schaub show that's now being basically helmed by him and a couple of co-hosts that he has revolving due to, of course, the issues that Brian Callen's going through. You can check my previous videos to find out what that's about. But this appearance from Steve-O essentially detailed or kind of emphasized some of the reason why people don't like Brendan Schaub. I've said it, mentioned before. I don't really mind the guy. I think it's okay in small doses. Unfortunately, if your whole media intake revolves around Schaub, from the below the belt to the stuff he does in his podcast to the other appearances he does on other shows, then he can get a bit exhausting. But much like Bert Kreischer, in that if you take him in small doses, he's pretty digestible. The same thing you have to do with Brendan Schaub, and you know, it is what it is. But I still think there's a route for him to sort of turn the sentiment around him back around, because I think if you see how he communicates with people in the scene and his peers, friends, whatever they may be, even if it has to do with him being friends with Joe Rogan, you do get the impression that people actually like him as a person. They think he's an actual good dude, which goes a long way, I think, in general, than, you know, the hate comments you get online from random people that don't know you. I think the people that have to deal with you day to day, if they generally like your company, they think you're a pretty decent, if not harmless personality, then I think everyone else should give him a chance and give him an opportunity to rectify himself. But I think that's the situation. That's where he's missing out on, that kind of acknowledgement or kind of self-awareness of knowing exactly why people aren't necessarily fans of him, and also being understanding enough of knowing that it's not just because of hate. It's not just because they're not as successful as I am, that's why they don't like me, blah blah blah. It's like, no, they cannot like you because you just maybe represent everything that they hate about, you know, the entertainment industry at the moment, which is an okay situation, which is an okay which is an okay POV to have. If it's it's a bit hatery, don't get me wrong, but it's okay to feel that way. And Steve-O essentially kind of pulls him up on one bit of it where he essentially tries to make it seem as if I am this hardworking guy that digs fucking tunnels and works in the coal mine when I'm doing stand-up comedy, when it's not really that big of a deal, really, if you think about it. And again, it's funny that he'd mentioned the co-sign of his agency as being some sort of validation of how hard he's working, and really, in fact, of course, his agency saying this about him is equivalent to when those girls on OnlyFans say, hey, look, I'm the top 1% earner on OnlyFans. Like, of course OnlyFans are going to tell you that so that you keep uploading content. You know what I mean? It's come on. But hey, let's continue here.
You're not posting the countless time you put into doing that special and how many shows you do on the road. Like for CA, I think 2 years ago, this previous year before all this COVID shit happened, CA goes, you did the most cities out of any comic we have, man. So they don't see that grind that goes in to get into that special.
It's so funny when you put it that way, but they also don't see how you're bringing home a check every time you practice.
That is true. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the point, right? And that's the issue why people don't like Brendan in terms of stand-up comedy, because he didn't have to graft how everyone else grafted, which is not fair. I think however you come into the industry, however you make it is how you make it. I think if you're funny, funny's funny. I think that's one thing I've basically learned from listening to the podcast. It's not necessarily how you make it, because there's so many ways to make it. There's no set way to make it. But there obviously is acknowledgement that there is a bit of a cheat code when you're such close friends with somebody like a Joe Rogan and you have his work ethic. Now, don't get me wrong. Not everyone that's been around Joe Rogan has been able to make a career out of themselves. That's for sure. But if you're at least a little bit hardworking, right, you can get very, very far in life if you're associated with somebody that can essentially co-sign you, walk you through some doors, introduce you for some people, extol your flipping graces and whatever malarkey. And if you're able to, of course, if you're going on the show too and you're able to perform really well, it can obviously help you. But to somehow suggest that the good word of your agency is saying, oh, you're a hardworking guy, is somehow validation that you're working hard, is a little bit rich, to be honest. Everyone in their own way should I say everyone works hard? That's not really true either, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, he has his point. He does work hard. I'm sure in terms of comedians, he's probably a freak, right? Because most of those guys don't even redo their act. They still have the same act that they were still touring on from flipping 10 years ago. So I'm sure this guy, at least trying to write new jokes and talk from an introspective, contemporary, or from a now moment, does probably set him apart. But to suggest somehow that hardworking at something is enough is a little bit rich, especially when you got a bit of the cheat code that he's got when it comes to being associated with Rogan. And then the other clip, which was really funny, was this one. Where can I get it? Hold on. Where is it? Yeah, this one. I think this is the one, right? I think I've got it here. Let's load it up on here. If it loads up, let's pause it. Is it paused? Yep, it's paused. Let's get up on screen. And this again is another reason why he's not well liked. And this was definitely the kind of, I think, the inflection point of what kind of tipped some people over the edge. I think, of course, their move from Fox onwards was basically a bit of the downward spiral, because that's when Brendan started to get a bit of steam, and he started to pick up a bit of steam, started to sell out shows. And naturally, at that infancy in comedy, at anything you're doing, you're obviously going to start feeling yourself, thinking that your shit doesn't stink, and blah, 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 blah. The below the belt stuff was popping up. He signed a deal with Showtime, and suddenly he was going sky high, right? So that's when the ill feelings started to come, because people started to feel as if he started to change in front of the camera. And then, of course, the AMA on Reddit went completely bad. They didn't take it in good jest. They didn't laugh at themselves. They took it too seriously. It became us v them, haters and all that sort of nonsense. But this was definitely the inflection point, was obviously the comedy special that he did on Showtime that was trash. And Steve-O sort of caused him on this.
Do you have the antibodies after you're dust up with some...
Let's go back on it. I'll just go back on it.
I didn't dig it. I'm straight up doing acid improv in Dallas this weekend.
Okay.
So I'm back on regular.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you have the antibodies after you're dust up with some...
This guy here in the corner, like, he laughs such I don't know, he laughs in such an LA way, innit, right? This exaggerated, like, everything is so, like, these guys will make you feel like you're fucking Dave Chappelle, innit, hanging around with them, innit? Like, god damn it, man, everything is so hilarious. Like, it's not really that funny, really. Let's just relax. It's maybe funny because everyone's thinking whatever they're thinking in their head, right? Because, like I said, I think the moment these
Brian and Brenda got COVID is when everyone turned against them. Like, you know what, we've had enough of these guys. They got COVID. They were so dismissive of it in the beginning anyway, right? They were so like, do you remember how angry they were, like, about not being able to tour and do their flipping stand-up shows, as if these shows are somehow serving humanity in some big grandiose way, in whatever way, shape or form. And then they went out their way to put their show on because their fans must see them live, right? Imagine of all the things you want to do post-lockdown, the one thing that you're dying to do is to see Brendan Schaub and Brian Callen tell fucking dick jokes on stage. They go out and do it, and instead of doing it in a COVID-secure way, because at the moment, now it's changed, right? The sentiment, everyone's sort of touring, everyone's doing these driving show and park shows, but even then, just be a little bit respectful of what's going on. Have some sort of understanding of the climate, distance, you know, put some safety measures in place. Because I remember even you said, "Oh, it's not my responsibility. It's a comedy club. I'm just talent." It's like, yeah, of course, but now things have changed. You all have to take responsibility now. You have to kind of put your quest to make money, your quest to go and connect with your fans, your quest to go and sell merch, your quest to go and, you know, what was that thing he said? Your quest to go and what's that thing he said about Joe and thingamajiggy? Not lame pipe. What was that fucking phrase they used? Whatever that phrase was, right? Because you have to think about it. Most of these guys, as much as they talk about going connecting with fans, stand up for them is mostly an opportunity to kind of get away from the family, right? Make some money on the road and hang out with your friends, right? That is mostly the kind of allure of it, which is why they all get in trouble on the road. It's no coincidence that all the trouble seems to come from the road. It never comes from in home. There's never an issue with domestic violence, with neglecting your children, setting fire to your house. It's never that. It's always to do with stuff on the road. Always. So this is funny.
People were so mean about it, man.
Well, yeah, because you were a dick about it, mate. You didn't acknowledge it actually existed. You thought as if like everyone was overreacting. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was just a common cold. Right, and then you went to a flipping place in Texas thinking it could be okay, and you end up getting your entire team infected, and then try to lie about it. And then he said, you remember he said, oh, it was like he didn't even quarantine. He went straight out and did like a 20-mile bike ride. You guys are dumb, and he had to delete the flipping story. He's so awful, man. That's probably why people don't like the guy, isn't it? Like it's so amazing how successful he is, considering just how dumb he is in some respects, isn't it? But again, props to the guy.
Yeah, people are brutal about it. Yeah.
My God. Yeah, I saw one particularly fucking.
Look his face. Look his face. Look his face.
You gotta just...
Look his face. He can't really. He can't take jokes by himself, in it. He's starting to get better at it, but he's so sensitive.
Credit the person for coming up with the witty headline. Like COVID. It said COVID, the only thing killing at a Brian Schaub show.
Oh. Brian Schaub as well. That's what makes it better, right?
Oh,
you call him Brian Schaub. No, that's funny. Now they're all laughing properly. See before the difference between the industry laughing and the real laughing, and then look at Brendan Schaub's face. Look at him. He is not one happy. He is not a happy bugger there, isn't it? He looks really annoyed.
Yeah, me and Brian both got it at that show. I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, again, and I honestly think that aside, right? I think if he's able to laugh himself more and take the piss at how kind of flipping dumb but successful he has been in life, I think he'd be okay. People would actually be fans of him once again. I think even the naysayers, even the guys that, you know, go out their way to insult him and leave derogatory comments and go out their way to sort of say the most harshest things so he can get blocked from his account, I think those guys can get turned around if he was able to kind of laugh at himself and be like, you know what, this is ridiculous. I'm a former, you know, UFC fighter who stumbled upon this career because I'm hanging out with some of the best comedians in the world, and now suddenly I'm selling out shows, I have a successful podcast, I'm going on tour places. Like, this is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Like, I should laugh at myself, but no, it doesn't happen to everybody. And then once you get over that, people, once he's sort of over that, because it feels like he does hold a little bit, I wouldn't say he's he does have, there is something about him that probably does feel like a bit of a fraud in some way, shape or form, which is you're allowed to. But I think once he's comfortable enough to accept, hey, this is how I got in the game, it is what it is, and then he's able to accept himself, people will basically move on. But the fact that he's so tense about it and defends the special and says he shouldn't, it just makes it look a bit strange. And then I guess the last clip, oh yeah, and then the last thing to relate to this is Neil Brennan saying exactly the same thing that I'm saying, which kind of goes back to the idea of like, people need to kind of lay off Brendan, because in some ways I think comedy and some of the entertainment and creative things in life or avenues, there's no exact science, man, as to how to make it. You make it however you make it, but most of the reason why people make it is primarily due to hard work and persistence, basically, right? And Neil Brennan in his interview with PeteMcGrath.org, I'm not sure what that is, but I remember his interview from back in the day that I wanted to kind of talk about. He says this really amazing thing. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah. So he says a really amazing thing regarding hard work in the scene, regarding hard work in comedy, right? It says here, here's a question from the interview. It says, if I lived in LA, I would listen to more podcasts. You spend more time in a car for longer periods. The last question is, what is the secret to success? For everybody knows, but what can't they seem to do? And Neil Brennan says the following: it's like diet and exercise. It's the key to weight loss, and the key to success is hard work and persistence. It's unfortunate because it sucks, which is the definite truth of it, right? I think, especially in stand-up, you do get the impression, listen to these guys for so many hours, that a lot of these guys have basically stumbled upon a career path for them that doesn't necessarily involve that much work. They don't have to try that hard at it, especially if you're good. I'd imagine comedy is similar to DJing in my field, where in DJing, because it's such a low barrier of entry, it's one of the only things that you can do in the music industry. It doesn't require you to have to learn an instrument, to learn how to write music. It's fairly easy for the most part. Again, it's the lowest form of entry to get into it, apart from singing and rapping, which again, you need to be talented or have the ability to do so in the beginning or have the confidence. It obviously then, at the entry level, there's too many of you, right? Especially when you go to open deck night, you're like, right, everyone DJs. But quite quickly, if you have got any kind of acumen, if you've got any kind of taste in music, you are familiar with tonality, you kind of can feel, you can kind of have a sense for keys and what fits together sonically, even if it's not the right tempo. You start to quickly see that if you just spend a little bit more time honing your craft, you can make some really big leaps and kind of surpass the people you come into the game with, because most people are crap. And I think comedy is the same sort of thing. You stumble upon it, you go to the open mic circuit, and quite quickly you realize, raw, these guys are all terrible. And if you spend just a little bit more time honing your craft with the little intrinsic talent you might have and work ethic, you will make leaps and bounds of progression. Now, unfortunately, the higher up you go, the harder it gets, because the higher up you go, the more talent everyone seems to be in a room, right? Everyone, especially from the middle tier onwards, I always say, is at the beginners, there's at the bottom tier, the middle tier, and the top tier. Usually everyone in the middle tier can command the stage. Like, no, even if they don't have the name to sell tickets, most people within the middle tier of stand-up and DJing can command a crowd, can hold a crowd's attention, can probably be undiscernible in their act compared to somebody else. But unfortunately, there's not as many opportunities for everybody, because you're all kind of fighting for the same spots. But most of the reason why those guys make it from the bottom to the middle is mostly to do with hard work. And he continues on that here. He says here, in the last interview I did, this idea of perseverance came up. We were quoting someone we had a coffee with, who said there are no failures in Hollywood, only quitters. That's taking that to an extreme. He said, in Neil Brennan says the following: what's wrong with Hollywood? There's a Jerry Falwell quote, which is, in Hollywood, the losers never go home. In the argument against your friend's observation, and far more cutting and probably true. The thing with Hollywood is most people are not talented, and no one ever says you're not talented, which is definitely true, especially in the arts, right? It's very difficult for somebody to... That's why sports is so amazing, because it's so black and white. If you can't jump and you can't run, you don't have the coordination, or you just can't perform to a certain standard, you just get dashed to the side and people move on. And you quickly realize whether or not you're good at that thing or not, or you quickly realize your level. But unfortunately, in the entertainment world and everything else creatively minded, there is so muddy, it's so kind of... hard to quantify what kind of leads to somebody being great and somebody not being so great. And sometimes it has a lot to do with who you know and all that good stuff. And a lot like what Bert Kreischer says, most of it is just plain old luck. Sometimes you just come up at the right time. It's like vlogging, right? It's like Cobra Snake from back in the day, taking pictures of people in the scene. If you just happen to be around in LA when the whole scene is popping off, and suddenly this whole kind of EDM sort of electro vibe is popping, and you're traveling with people, you're taking pictures, you happen to be the voice and the sort of official photographer for that scene, even if you're not that good at it. Just because you happen to be around and you're willing to take pictures and you stay up longer than everybody else and you don't drink and you don't smoke and all that good shit, you could just happen to create a career for yourself. Now, if you give up halfway through that time, then you're just going to be forgotten in the history books. But if you continue on and have perseverance, you just end up making it. So, and it's never really about talent in that regard. It continues here. A buddy of mine, Nick Stoller, who wrote and directed Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Get Him to the Greek and a bunch of other stuff, he said, every day in Hollywood is Christmas Eve because tomorrow is a big day, which is kind of true. Tomorrow, everyone is going to get the big prize. People drink juice out here, a performance-enhancing drug. They're trying to optimize the output, and like, if they do the right juice, I'm going to cleanse right now. And it's like, you're not talented. You don't do any diet. It doesn't matter. I don't want to look at your face and you're not interesting. There's nothing about you that you can do, which is true, right? There is that kind of aspect of it about sometimes hard work and perseverance isn't enough. You need to have some intrinsic talent. But I definitely do think when it comes to like a Schaub, especially in LA, especially considering how some of these guys talk about their practice, it's no surprise he was able to make he was able to progress so quickly, especially with his co-signs, because he's just willing to just do more shows, go on the road more, abandon his family, quote unquote, right? And kind of continue building on a platform that he's been given. And it continues here a little bit. It says the quote the interviewer says, that's the point about hard work and perseverance, that it's conditioned on some level of talent. And he says, yeah, if you're not talented, the only thing you can succeed at is manual labor. Honestly, if you don't have a talent, then success will be minimal. It's pretty proportionate talent to success level. I don't know many, especially in comedy. There are a few people that kill every night and can't get it going because they have a drug or alcohol issues and they missed their window or whatever. I remember Sebastian Maniscalco would be like, I can't. All I do is book birthday parties in the Middle East. I told him, you're going to be an Italian Brian Regan, trust me. He kept killing and he sold out Radio City 5 times. There are people that can't get a show on there. If you're great at comedy, you're great at comedy, which is true, right? But again, it's great. It's been obviously great at what you're doing and obviously hard work. And I definitely think there's an aspect of Brendan that's just like, he's just made it through pure grit. He's just kind of stuck in there, even when people said he couldn't do what he could do. And now look at the success that he's been able to bring. And of course, you know, not everybody that's connected with Joe Rogan is successful as he is. And I think if he's able to kind of be a little bit more self-reflective, a little bit more, what's that word called? Whatever that thing is called, when you're self-deprecating, he'll become a lot more likable to a lot more people going forward. But again, that's only what I know, innit? That's only what I know. Anyway, that's the Zinga Show episode number 282. Thanks so much for tuning in as per usual. If it's your first time listening, make sure you click that subscribe button, smash that like, and obviously leave me a comment down below. If you're listening via the podcast app, please download the show, share it, spread the word, get it out there, let people know about what I'm doing. And of course, if you want to support the show via Patreon, you're more than welcome to. Link is down below. Support the show via Patreon in the link below. Agostinho via the Patreon, patreon.com/Agostinho, patreon.com/AGOSTINHO. Until then, I'll see you again very, very soon. Take care, be safe, and be well. Enjoy yourself. Take care.